explain everything to everyone. We changed things last minute last night.
How's everyone doing? Everybody good? Welcome to Malta. For those of you who haven't been here before, this is the blockchain island. I know you've heard it from various different people that this jurisdiction or that country is where it's happening, but I have to be honest and say that this country has done an amazing job with providing the infrastructure and the platform necessary in order for businesses in this ecosystem to scale and grow. I want to start off today by obviously thanking the organizers, Malta Blockchain Summit, Sigma, done a phenomenal job putting on an amazing affair. I think we can all say that Iman Poulos has done an incredible job gathering so many thought leaders and people in such a small island in order to really showcase such an amazing technology. I want to give a round of applause for Malta Blockchain Summit, Sigma, and Iman. My name is Eric Benz. I've been speaking for many years. I've been moderating many different Bitcoin and blockchain conferences. I remember the first conference I moderated in 2012. There was about 12 people there. And you know, Iman, the first Sigma he did, which was in 2013, I believe it was, I was asked to come and talk about Bitcoin. And I remember I was put on the last day at the last time slot, and there were probably 8 people in the audience, Iman being one of them. And you know, it was fantastic just to talk about the technology in terms of what advantages operators would be able to take from it. But it was just even early for me, and to go down this path for the past 5, 6 years now, you know, it's really been interesting to actually see the development and the growth and exactly how this whole space is going to develop. I'm going to be moderating today. We're going to have a really interesting day. There's going to be pre-recordings making all the announcements. But I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for putting this together. This is the only way that this ecosystem is going to grow, and it's the support and the attention that these businesses require in order to really make this work. So thank you again, and we're going to kick it off with the first panel today.
Let's go.
I was told there were pre-recorded announcements, so I don't have to do too much.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the regulatory conference of the Malta Blockchain Summit 2018, sponsored by Blockchain Advisory. Opening fireside chat. Carla Marie Vella, founder of Consult XD and brand ambassador of MBS. Mark Hamade, partner, Vivaris Capital.
Good morning, everyone. I expect you to say good morning back. Thank you very much. Welcome to Blockchain Island. For those of you who don't live here, we hope to make you live here after this conference. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Carla. How are you?
I'm good. We've been having some interesting evenings the past 2 nights. What do you think?
It's been amazing. The people here are amazing. The island is amazing. It's really special.
Right. And we kind of synced up here, you with your glitter jacket and me with my blingalicious shoes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because it's an event to be dressed up for.
Well, yesterday was Halloween, so I'm continuing today.
Let's just jump in. We really don't have a lot of time. Mark, it's been a great honor to get to know you over the last few months up to the roll-up of the conference. And one thing that really struck me about reading your profile is that you call yourself a conscious capitalist. And this rung with me. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what defines a conscious capitalist? Because personally, I love money, all right? But I like to be conscious about it as well.
Well, I think money is very important, but at the end of the day, when my grandmother raised me in Lebanon, she said to me, you know what, you need to work hard so you can take care of your family and be able to support them and hopefully support me if I'm still alive. So really it's about creating jobs. So a conscious capitalist to me is you got to take care of the people, the planet, profitable enterprise, and women entrepreneurs. So I'm all about the 3 Ps and the 1 W, right? So the planet, we take care of it because we want our animals and our people to survive. And along with that, we want to support women entrepreneurs. We want to support everybody, right? And then we take on projects that can become profitable by creating jobs. If you create jobs and you feed families and you pay them well and you support them, the money will be there. She never said to me, hey, you know what? Get a Rolls Royce or a Ferrari. Those are all accessories. So if you really think about scaling a company and making it long-lasting, and really creating jobs and doing it right, you'll be very wealthy, Carla.
Oh, well, I think that's certainly top-notch advice. I think that a lot of people in the blockchain space have seen like this explosion of capital, maybe not so recently with the dips of crypto, but it'll go back. I'm sure of that at some point. But I think that this is just such an important, I mean, we're opening regulatory, but it's also a beautiful thing to just be really conscious of why we're here and the opportunities within this sector.
Absolutely, and it's not really, I don't call it networking. Don't network, build relationships. Yesterday, I just met one new person, okay? He's exited out of 11 companies, and he's a good person. He's a good human being. So that's a relationship that I'm going to nurture and nurture and nurture. It's not about 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Meet people. Get to really know them. If they're a good person and a good human being, great. If they're not, you don't want to work with them. There's no such thing as a good deal with a bad person. You will always lose, period.
Very, very also good tip there. So I see a lot of people just like playing on their phone. So if you are on your phone, do me just a small favor and just go onto your social media and just hashtag my blockchain island or blockchain island, as you're seeing you're part of the crowd on all your social media, so that people know that we're kicking off, and let's make a little bit of a social media ripple today as well. And back to the networking thing, Mark. I think that you hone in on something really important there as well. It's like developing really strong relationships with people. Those relationships are going to last beyond the conference. And this is one thing that I can really say about the blockchain community, is that the people I've met at the blockchain conferences that I've been to are now my friends. We're talking on like a daily basis on Telegram, It's just like the relationship stays there. And that's so valuable, because it's not about, it's not just about business. It's not just about how much money we're going to make or not going to make. It's about, how's your dog? How's your mother? And that's so important. We're humans at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you dig deep into some of the speakers, some of the female speakers are amazing, outstanding. Just because you may have not heard of somebody does not mean they're not very, very special. So really get to know them and get to know each other, and then really, that's what makes an event. It's not necessarily, Iman brings people together, but then it's everybody working together and not complaining, well, yeah, you might have not gotten your badge, or this happened, or your toilet isn't working. Who cares, okay? Just work on solutions, talk to each other, help each other, and be honest with what you need, whether it's money, people, whatever. No one can help you if you're not fully transparent with your needs.
That's great. So I hope we've given you a few I've warmed you up a little bit, because now it's going to get like really legal and regulatory, and we're going to go into the acts and why Malta is amazing, and the Prime Minister is going to be here, and you're going to get mind blown from a content perspective as well. But I hope that we've influenced you to take the opportunity within the coffee breaks to really network with people and take that moment aside and really embrace everybody that's here today. Thank you all for being here.
And have fun!
That's it. Let's do this.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, and we'll see you around. Let's go.
Government incentives for startups. Malta Enterprise, a government entity, has a number of attractive schemes aimed at making it easier for startups in AI, big data, quantum technology, and IoT to relocate or co-locate in Malta. Anthony David Gutt, Malta Enterprise.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and again, welcome to the show. I'm amongst the first Maltese also to be on stage, so I feel that is my responsibility to welcome you not just to the show, but to our island, to Blockchain Island, and explain a bit further to you all what the Maltese economy looks like, and then going also into a bit of detail about what Malta Enterprise, the corporation that I represent, has in store for you. But basically, let me start with the presentation, if we manage to get that on. A couple of slides back. So, Malta, a vibrant economy, open for business. This is the way that Malta is presenting itself to the world, as a space where you as entrepreneurs can come to, can discuss with the executive authorities, can sit down and have an actual help in setting your business here. Carla Marivella was just on stage, decides to brand Malta Enterprise as the welcoming party. And that's what we are. We are the welcoming party. Malta Enterprise is the government corporation sitting under the Ministry of Economy that helps incoming FDI, but also is there to help already established businesses in Malta, be them Maltese-owned or foreign-owned here in Malta. But let me go into my presentation to give you a bit of a background of the Maltese economy and also our standing in the world. So our strategic location, obviously the majority of you flew in. You saw that we are spam in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. That has been very important for us through the ages to have all those shipping routes passing by, all the commerce passing through these routes, but it also is important nowadays also in your business, because we are very well connected, still being an island. The fact that we are an island should not discourage you from looking at Malta as your headquarters, as a space where you have a productive enterprise developing. Next year, in fact, Malta will be more connected to European locations than Heathrow. Imagine that. So that is the level of connection. And on the manufacturing side, which is not obviously the topic of today, but there are a lot of connections as well via through shipping, through our Freeport. So our location is one of our added pluses alongside our human resource. Moving on so that we don't waste time. A bit of statistics in relationship with the European Union. So yes, we are full members since 2004, but above and beyond that, we are also euro. We use the euro as our national currency, and we're also members of Schengen. These elements can be, again, of added value if you look at Malta as an actual operative jurisdiction. Moving on, the point of the slide is the resilience of our economy. We're not just based on one or two sectors. You can look at aviation, education, energy, financial services, a very important sector for us. Obviously tourism, but also digital games, pharmaceuticals, high-tech manufacturing. We have a number of very important manufacturers that use Malta for import, for re-export their products all around the world. ST Microelectronics, Methode, Playmobil, Lufthansa. These are some of the big names that use the Maltese human resource to provide value to their product here and also as part of their group. Moving on to some statistics, not to bore you this morning, hopefully I won't bore you to that, but quickly, real GDP growth, unemployment, employment growth, GDP per capita, these are the indicators that people around the world look at to see if an economy is healthy or not. And thankfully, because of a lot of hard work from all involved, Malta is achieving great results. Also, A ratings from the credit rating agencies as well. Moving on, just a couple of real-world comparisons. The healthcare system, the internet bandwidth per user, which is very important as an additional infrastructure for blockchain, for digital games, from iGaming. So just a quick snapshot of that. Moving on to Malta digital innovation. Digital innovation, why digital innovation? It didn't come out of thin air. We are not in blockchain island because of a coincidence. We had Maltese entrepreneurs working in software development and the traditional IT sector, and that have then roped in international players when we were avant-gardist in legislating for our iGaming sector, the betting, gambling, online sector. The financial services industry also was an important player that led us to this blockchain island of today. But there was a robust ICT infrastructure. What can you do without that? And we're looking at continue improving that. There, as I just said, we were undisputed frontrunners in the iGaming sector. And there's all these elements that come to our aid in creating this blockchain island. In fact, there was a number of Maltese entrepreneurs and also entrepreneurs from the iGaming industry that were part of the initial community that pushed this blockchain island. Moving on, Malta, blockchain island. It's not just blockchain island, however. We're looking at the continued advance of our positioning around the world on innovative technologies. You may call it disruption, you may call it transformation. But yes, Malta wants to be avant-gardist. And this is showcased by the 3 pieces of legislation that you will have a full day hearing details about. But basically, it's bringing the virtual currencies world with the DLT world together, offering a safe space, a legal jurisdiction that embraces, and not just embraces with words, embraces with legislation, and embraces also with government offering services on the blockchain to our Maltese citizens as well. So what has happened over the last months as Malta Enterprise as well? We have collaborated with all the relevant players on the island, be them people like Eman that has brought together this fabulous show today, and hats off to him, but also internally within government with Silvio Scambri, the junior minister responsible for the sector, with the MFSA, the Financial Services Authority, that is responsible from the fintech financial services side, and also the newly created MDIA, Malta Digital Innovation Agency, that has been created, tasked to take care of the certification on the DLT side. And we have met many of you here. I'm very happy to see faces that I've seen before, people I've met before from all parts of the world, from Argentina to China, from Slovenia from all over the world. We have met and we have learned. Personally, technically, I'm still a student in his primary years in this field, but through the conversations with yourselves, we have learned. And we have learned, and not just to say it today, but we have also some products for you. If you're a startup and you're looking to come to Malta and operate in Malta as a jurisdiction, we are in the business of creating quality jobs, high adding value jobs here on the ground. That's what being the blockchain island means. We're not just here for the jurisdiction part, we want to create value. And if you're a startup and you're looking to come to Malta, and we're proud to be sponsoring the Startup Village just outside of these doors as Malta Enterprise, we can help you with a loan mechanism. A loan mechanism that can go up to 200,000 euros as a loan, repayable over a period of 10 years, starting with a 3% interest rate, with a mechanism of paid-up share capital matching, 1:1. I'll spare you the details now, but please come by our stand, just outside here, as you turn on the right, or upstairs near the Investors Lounge, so that we can discuss further. We will have a team of 15 people here going around and giving you the answers that you need. Quickly, investment aid tax credits. There's also fiscal incentives that we can discuss. So this is the second product. And finally, highly qualified personnel engaged by the company, personal tax. So this is the personal tax incentive. If you're looking to employ people on the ground, and you will manage to find many of your roles here on the ground, but you miss that particular role, that is crucial for your profitability, and you need to import that talent, we can help that individual with his personal tax, deducting his personal tax to just 15%. But the ticker is closing on to close my presentation. Final thoughts. I wish you all a successful event where you can meet here in this room and the 5,000 people that will be roaming in these corridors. There are amongst the world's top innovators, because this technology, blockchain, that we're all trying to understand, is what it is. It's a technology, alongside many others, which will crucially change the world, transform, disrupt, take to new levels. And the solutions and the propositions that we have heard from people coming to Blockchain Island have been amazing. And you are positioned at the best time, at the best stage, to make use of those connections. So enjoy the show. Please pass by our stands so that we can discuss further. But most importantly, thank you to Eman, to Dennis, and to Carla Marie for making this happen, and all the team, obviously. Thank you so much.
Regulatory foresight, protecting the consumer without stifling the advancement of technology. 5 of the greatest crypto minds offer their refreshing take on the implications of regulation and what it means for blockchain. Joseph Borge, WH Partners. Anna Trbovic, Grid Singularity. Ben Goertzel, SingularityNet. Stephen Nahm, Stanford Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy. Mark Kurmi, KPMG.
That was a good guy. All right. Thank you for making it so early in the morning. This is the first panel of the day. Let's keep it fun, exciting to the extent possible. I'm Stephen Nahm, as it was noted, the managing editor of the Stanford Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy. And we have today a very distinguished panel of experts on regulation in the blockchain space. So let's start with some quick self-introductions, and then we can be on our way. Wonderful. Anna.
Thank you. My name is Anna Trbovic. Originally a startup, which has become an international organization over time, building a vertical energy industry blockchain, a platform for a range of energy apps, B2B and B2C likewise.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Kurmi. I'm a director in KPMG, and I handle banking regulation, financial institution regulation, and more recently, virtual financial asset regulation and regulation which is directly related to blockchain. So, good morning.
Morning, it's Joe Borch. I'm a partner at WH Partners. I'm heading the blockchain advisory section within the firm, as well as the gaming advisory section. My background is gaming. I've been in the gaming industry for 12 years, including 7 years at the Gaming Authority, where I was also Chief Regulatory Officer.
Wonderful. Thank you. So to begin, I think what helps define us in the blockchain space is a persistent and admirable fearlessness in the face of old constraints and structures of power. Yet I think decentralized communities have seen bad actors and their chilling effects proliferate in the legal void. So just as our developers work on, for example, ways to punish, let's say, malicious miners in a proof-of-stake framework, so too must our legal and policy movers and shakers continue to be vigilant and innovative. The Stanford Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy encourages blockchain enterprises and regulators to sustain an ongoing dialogue, preferably enhanced by academia, to talk to one another rather than merely react to each other, which I think we've seen a lot of, right? Because neither side is doing everything right, and also neither side is doing everything wrong. So I'll ask the same question for each of our panelists. Feel free to jump in, no order or whatever. Do you feel that improved relations between blockchain enterprises and regulators are needed? If so, what can be done to build a better relationship? If not, what is the proper role of regulators in the space? Let's begin.
Thank you for the question, Stephen. I think if you ask what is better, you imply that there may be an issue. In our case, I have found that regulators welcome communication and education. They want to learn, and the more they learn, the more they become advocates of the technology. In energy space, which I'm aware that many of you are not as familiar with, it allows them to directly observe the market, and we hope in the future they will actually become a validator on our chain. They're not ready for that yet, obviously, but some are very advanced, and you'd be surprised that we even have a regulator that has a blockchain app, and that regulator is from Chile. And now all the neighboring countries in the region want to do the same. It's a very positive competition. And we're bringing them to Europe, and we brought them for the first time this April at Event Horizon, which is our annual energy blockchain conference, to showcase to other regulators what they're doing. And when I say regulation, it's at the global level. You know, it's from this confusion of, you know, do you want to be a utility token or a security token, or should you just register both and then have the headache of explaining which is which and what purpose it serves? So there's still too much confusion in the financial space. I understand that many of you have basic issues like having to do KYC in person and not through an app in some countries. So there's still a lot of misunderstanding. In energy space, again, there are vertical issues. So the most disruptive innovation that can come through energy blockchain apps is obviously peer-to-peer trading, which is illegal in most places because you have to pass through a tough process to get a license to become an energy trader, which, you know, your fridge cannot do at the moment. So we have yet to come to a space where this is allowed by law. But again, we do have some advanced regulators, and at the moment that's UK, Austria, and some others that are opening so-called regulatory sandboxes and allowing pilots. And we do spend a lot of time talking to them. So in addition to building the technology, and we're the, like I said, energy industry blockchain, we spend a lot of time in Brussels and other countries around the globe educating. And we do that often with our affiliates, and our affiliates are energy corporates and startups from around the world. So there is still a lot of time to be invested in education, and obviously startups and startup mode organizations don't have as much time as big corporates that tend to have departments to deal with this. So it is an opportunity cost, but one that we feel is also an important investment at this stage.
Yeah, just listening to what Anna just said, and thinking at least from the regulatory side, you asked a question, sort of, okay, blockchain enterprises and regulators. I think, to me, especially what's going on in Malta, across Europe and across the world, regulators aren't asked to protect consumers, no, to protect investors. In fact, locally, that is one of the founding principles of our regulation. So you've got entities, blockchain enterprises, which is a big umbrella, right? You've got a variety of entities there, and you've got entities under the umbrella of regulators. If we take Malta as an example, you've got situations where the regulator has clearly said, sort of, listen, we want to protect our consumers, but we want to enhance innovation. How do we do that? We do that by going to the public and private industries and speaking to them, and actually creating a collaborative environment. I think. Again, taking Malta as an example, I will speak about Malta predominantly, but Malta has taken a bold step in where it would like to take this collaborative environment. And the collaborative environment over the past 14 months has clearly shown that if the industry, if enterprises, if regulators all come together with the main aim of ensuring that all parties are getting value out of this, and at the end of the day, the consumer, the investor, the one-man guy that's sitting at home and is actually utilizing some kind of a technology is actually protected. And I think that's the basis and underlying element for how blockchain enterprises and regulators should be communicating. I think there still needs a lot. There's still a lot to be done, quite frankly. But we're on the right track. If you look at other jurisdictions, there have been different ways of looking at the regulatory regimes versus how blockchain enterprises are actually operating. And obviously, that also drives down to the strategic direction which a country is taking. So I mean, holistically, just my final comment on this question would be, how can we improve this? So there's always going to be room for improvement. I think, and I'm really happy to see so many new faces, actually, that everybody continues to contribute, be it in Malta, be it overseas, be it in your jurisdiction, because in order to make sure that we continue driving the regulatory side together with the entrepreneurial side, there needs to be that collaboration. And there isn't that mentality that the regulator is there to dictate, the regulator is there to help innovate. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Joseph. Yes. Go ahead.
I believe that the word here that we all have to mention is balance, finding the right balance, right? So we need to find the right balance between consumer protection, which is very, very important, it's crucial. It's the reason why regulation is there. But also balance with allowing innovation to happen and allowing startups to grow, allowing small businesses to grow. So ultimately, this is an industry that is in its infancy. So we have to help this industry. We have to allow this industry to make mistakes, to fail sometimes, but within a controlled manner. So ultimately, anything that is innovative cannot be really built on foundations that exist for financial services industry that has been here for 20 years, 25 years. This is something that we have to accept the fact that it is a new industry. There will be some failures, but ultimately, the regulation has to find the balance between allowing this industry to grow, to innovate, but also to protect the consumer. And I believe that the initiative that was taken by the jurisdiction here was extremely positive towards the same. Obviously, we have to keep in mind that, like in everything else, regulation, the regulatory framework, not just the legislative framework, will have its teething problems, so we can't expect everything to be perfect from day one. But I believe with the idea of having a regulation of cryptocurrency-related services, as well as a regulation of technology-related services through the certification of DLT and accreditation of auditors, I believe that we have found the right mix to have a proper ecosystem for this industry to find Malta as the ideal hub.
Wonderful.
If I may, just to continue with what Joe is saying, I think I agree totally. And I think you can't build on a platform that's already existent, but you can take best practices. Again, looking at what has happened here from a jurisdictional perspective, the plumbing, okay, so how the infrastructure has been developed and is currently developing allows for entities like the Malta Digital Innovation Authority to come out and say sort of, listen, we are there, not to regulate, but to because regulate's a big word, it's certification, right, and it's self-certification, voluntary certification in certain cases. So if you look at having a regulator that is putting together sort of, listen, guys, this is the framework for this type of business, this is what we want to achieve, and we want to achieve it in this kind of a framework, but then having alternate certifiers, regulators, innovators come together and bring something to the table for the jurisdiction as a whole, but also for the industry as a whole, because every time we speak to someone here, we say Malta's small. So our level of activity has to be small and the economy has to be small. But in this case, this level of activity is not going to be based in Malta, or rather is based in Malta, but is there to service the rest of the world, not Europe, the rest of the world. So if we look at it, and I mean, this is testament, having all these people here, so looking at Malta as a jurisdiction which could potentially bring something to the table in a regulated but yet innovative framework, I think is something which is fantastic, quite frankly.
Wonderful. We don't have much time left, but I just thought of a question. This is something we grapple with often in Silicon Valley, and I think it's important for everyone in the room to consider, to think about it, because again, the blockchain space itself, there are certain counter-conventional, traditional kind of philosophies, right, ethos. I was wondering, so in the sharing economy, obviously we have examples like Uber, Lyft, they've outrun regulation. They're kind of in stealth, and then suddenly they're very societally useful, can't put it back in the box.
They're also banned in many countries.
True.
By regulation.
Right. There are countries that reacted quickly, but then you also have BitTorrent, a second generation, early peer-to-peer network that still continues to outrun regulation. What are your 2 cents in terms of, I think there are companies, enterprises that are tempted to kind of follow that model, and others that say, all right, let's be transparent, let's work with the existing regulatory structures, the government, so forth, and let's do it that way. What do you think is there an ideal balance? Because there are just grumblings from both sides, right? One side saying these guys are out of control, another side saying, why do we have to just do the same old thing, the age-old, timeless kind of approach? So any thoughts on that? I know it's not an easy question. Also, I encourage the audience if you have any thoughts.
I can tell you that in our case, the most disruptive innovation, which is this idea that devices in your home trade among themselves and pick what's the best time and price to buy the electricity at, and then the home picks where it wants to buy the electricity from, whether it's wind, whether it's a panel from a neighbor, or if they want to send as a solidarity part of their savings to someone else who cannot pay for electricity. All of those are possible apps in our system. And the way that we see the potential of blockchain energy is that it can help with balancing, and that we no longer will need these so-called spot prices and other prices and mechanisms and incentives that the governments put together. So from our perspective, to make this happen, you're not adapting to the current regulation. You're saying, let's scratch all of the regulation and start from fresh, and let's have this technology create own market. Obviously, that requires a lot of testing, and the technology is not quite ready for a whole town, region, or country, or globe to be connected in this way. But we are going in that direction, and then we will not be adapting to regulation, we'll be changing it completely. Now, there are many other applications where you don't need to do anything, where you're just improving a business process and you can work under existing legislation. So it's not an issue at all. And I'd say most of the apps fall in that category. But on the broader level, because we're a very conservative industry, right? So I think this is an ideal time for lawyers and tax advisors to thrive in, because there is no clarity whatsoever. If you ask them, they tell you, frankly, well, it's not clear at all how this could be legal, but it's also not illegal. And then you have to make a decision, and sometimes you don't want to make one. So, for example, we still have not done a public sale, and we don't know if we will because of this uncertainty. And if we do, are we going to do it just in one country? You forgo a short-term opportunity for long-term stability. So we would prefer if regulators would be more clear and if we paid our lawyers a little less. But I think it's going to take some time for all regulators to really understand and grasp and take this on. So it's great that Malta is one of the countries that is paying attention to this. Now, of course, Malta also has an image problem. So I wish that you as consultants can also help the government work on some public projects, like putting the land registry
on a blockchain or some other projects where you increase transparency, you decrease room for corruption, and you improve the legal environment overall. So it would be good that we have a country that has, applied blockchain to improve its public service as well, lead by example in that area as well.
So we have just a couple minutes. So maybe Joseph, if you have a quick thought, go for it. If not,
well, regulation,
yeah,
technology will always be ahead of regulation. This is very normal in all sectors. So the smart thing to do is to have regulation that is as technology neutral as possible. That is crucial. On your point, yes, I agree that the government should now live by what it's preaching and actually make use of this technology itself. I'm pretty sure there are initiatives going on. So we'll just wait and see, and I think that would be a very interesting thing to have a government that is really making use of the blockchain technology in its operations.
Excellent. And quick 30 seconds from the audience. Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm not sure. I can repeat what you say. Yeah.
There you are. There's a microphone coming.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Wolfgang Strasser. I'm a partner at a venture capital company based in Europe, Munich, and in San Francisco. And I'm also a former entrepreneur. And based on my long-standing experience with regulation, I have a very contrarian approach to what you just said on stage. My advice is, don't negotiate with the jurisdictions in location A. Go to B. That's more effective than negotiate in A. Second, don't ever rely on the laws, especially not initial laws.
Interesting.
Rely, if you have a government agency, then you can make a contract with, a contract that you can sue them for. That's my advice, based on regulatory experience in the telecoms industry, in the energy industry, and in the blockchain industry.
More food for thought. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Palace, audience, and let's keep moving. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Malta's attractiveness for blockchain. EY presents the key results of the instrumental blockchain survey conducted over the last few months. Ronald Attard, Ernst & Young.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here, and a big thanks to Eamon and his team for inviting me and also for organizing this, I think, wonderful event for Malta. For 14 years at EY, we have been running an annual survey which measures Malta's attractiveness. We presented the results last week, and this year's results, again, show that investors were reassuringly positive. I'll just show you a snapshot of what we presented last week. You will see behind me, 3/4 out of current investors perceive Malta to be as an attractive location. 83% think that Malta is keeping pace with regulatory change. And 56% consider Malta's legislative framework to provide an international competitive advantage. This survey does not relate to blockchain enterprises. Malta is a well-diversified country with various industries, some in the tourism sector, traditional manufacturing, financial services, and others. But I thought it would be good to start from here to give you a background to the country, particularly people from outside Malta. Much of Malta's success on this count has been built on innovative and robust regulatory frameworks. These have helped the country to upskill the local economy with new digital talent and forge a more diverse workforce with young, bright, international workers, working side by side with local people, and also driving investment in digital areas. Our survey shows that foreign investors increasingly believe that Malta is not only keeping pace with regulatory change, but carving out a competitive advantage across the board. Disruption is fundamentally changing the way the world works. What seemed unimaginable even a few years ago is now in front of our eyes. Until recently, firms rolled out new products to displace existing ones. Now, powered by the internet and a generation of connected users, platforms that connect diverse participants are displacing entire markets. It is against this backdrop that Malta is once again set to be a pioneer by being one of the first to create a comprehensive regulatory framework for innovative technology such as blockchain. In anticipation of this summit, we carried out another survey to explore the current state of play on Malta's blockchain activities. We had 80 respondents from 27 countries, with 93% of whom were actively involved in the industries. Crypto-related infrastructure, application development companies being the two largest cohorts. So what did we find out? DLT-related services are still relatively new to most companies, with 43% reporting they had been providing them for just over a year. Encouragingly, although many companies are in their infancy, 42% of those developing blockchain-related products have a live project, and 24% have one under development. Companies are exploring different and multiple revenue models and streams. Enterprise licenses, maintenance, and network fees are the most popular, with consulting and professional services also scoring highly. We also had a few questions on means of fundraising, with ICOs being attracting most attention over the last couple of years. Nevertheless, traditional means of financing still remain popular. I'm just sharing some highlights from the survey. We then, and perhaps more interestingly, asked people what they believe to be the biggest inhibitors to DLT adoption. And here, the three main factors related to, the top one was regulatory uncertainty and legal risks, while the availability of specialized skills was a close third. Interestingly, the lack of suitable use cases ranks at the bottom of the scale, as do confidentiality concerns. So people seem to be pretty upbeat and positive in terms of the ventures they are looking at. I believe this is overall good news for Malta. By creating a comprehensive regulatory framework, the country is filling a lacuna which people are highlighting over here. We next asked people to sort of comment about Malta. Over 60% of respondents are aware that Malta has passed legislation in the space. However, nearly a third are still not aware of the details. So events like this, and again, a big congrats to Eamon and his team, disseminate information on the topic, and are coming on stream at exactly the right time. And it will be interesting to track if awareness increases as a result of this and similar initiatives. So, ladies and gentlemen, do blockchain users find Malta attractive? The large majority of our respondents seem to think so, with only just over 10% stating otherwise. We prodded deeper and asked those who think that Malta is a suitable jurisdiction what led them to this conclusion. Over three-quarters state that it is because Malta is positioning itself at the forefront of the industry. A similar number say that the country provides them with a regulated environment in which to operate. Significantly, however, only 16% say that Malta has the right skills in place. It is a challenge we see, I would say, across the board, not just in this industry. Would these respondents consider relocating their business here? There's good news on this front. 59% say they will, another 27% say they are already on the island. Finally, we asked respondents what Malta could do to become a more attractive jurisdiction for business in this sector. Their two top priorities are to increase the availability of specialized skills and secondly, to provide R&D funding for DLT-related projects. And it was encouraging to see one of the speakers before me speak about incentives in this regard, with enhancements to the telecoms infrastructure scoring highly. For quite a while, just a word about UI, we at UI have been enthusiastic, almost messianic, I would say, about positioning blockchain technology as a key focal growth point for Malta's growth. We have first floated the idea at our annual investment Attractiveness event 3 years ago. At the time, few people knew what blockchain was. Globally, EY has recently made a multi-million-dollar investment in blockchain technology, talent, and facilities over the globe. We have been working super hard at expanding our blockchain development footprint worldwide. We have also come up with some cutting-edge DLT applications. I'll just mention a few. EY Tesseract, a platform for fractional asset ownership, including shared mobility. InsureWave, a marine insurance platform built in conjunction with Maersk, Microsoft, and Gartime. Trekkie, a supply chain traceability system. Blockchain Analyzer, which is a suite of blockchain technologies. And only today, we came up with a new tool that secures private transactions on the Ethereum mainnet enabled with zero knowledge proofs. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot going on in Malta, in the blockchain and DLT spheres. It was a great pleasure having the opportunity to share some of our insights here with you. I am delighted to see so many people. Once again, a big congrats to Eman, and I hope you have a wonderful conference. Thank you very much.
Malta's attractiveness for blockchain. EY presents the key results of the instrumental blockchain survey conducted over the last few months. Ronald Attard, Ernst & Young. Malta, directing legislation in technology. Today marks the effective launch of the DLT regulatory framework. A new era begins for Malta and all other jurisdictions looking to follow the blockchain island's footsteps. Jonathan Galia, Blockchain Advisory.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you are doing well. I'd like to start off with one simple statement. Remember the 1st of November, not the 4th. The reason I'm saying this is because the 1st of November symbolizes many things. Primarily, however, the 1st of November is the day when 25 years ago, the European Union, as we know it, has been formed with the signing of the Maastricht Treaty. 25 years later, in 2018, 28 EU member states formally form part of the European Union. However, I will go back to the first statement. Remember the 1st of November. Because precisely today, 1st of November 2018, it is the smallest EU member state which is announcing and bringing into effect the first regulatory framework in the world to tackle this new industry. So please, a round of applause for Malta and for its efforts in the sector. We at Blockchain Advisory are proud to have supported the government, the MFSA, and the MDIA in structuring this new framework. And the aim of the regulator has been that of introducing an element of sanity in this sector, precisely to end the wild, wild west. We recognize, of course, that the sector is still very new. It still needs to grow and mature even further. However, we also recognize the fact that there needs to be an element of regulation and not restrictions, which is why we have come up, well, Malta has enacted or brought into force today the Virtual Financial Assets Act, an act aimed at regulating the financial crypto assets. And in fact, first and foremost, we want, of course, to ensure that any ICOs taking place from Malta are done in the right manner, that the investors are protected, and that, of course, fiduciary obligations are respected. Furthermore, we also want to set a high bar for service providers, for brokers, custodians, those providing investment advice. And, above all, to also attract the world's top crypto exchanges, those providing a gateway for investors into the crypto world. Ultimately, we recognize that we're still at the very start, and that this is just, and really, truly just the beginning. Whether it's secured tokens or a revival of the current crypto market, we do understand that we're headed into very exciting times indeed. However, we do not just want to introduce regulation for cryptocurrencies. We understand this is just a very small part of this new disruptive technology, blockchain technology. Which is why we have another world's first. We have set up the first regulatory authority in the world which will provide certification for technology arrangements, for blockchain-based, or rather, DLT-based smart contracts, decentralized applications, platforms, whatever they might be. This is indeed the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, whose aim is to set the technical standard. We, of course, understand that we cannot regulate the technology itself. We cannot regulate the core protocols themselves. But we can help, of course, set a technical standard very much in the way that the ERC20 standard set, of course, the standard for tokens issued on the Ethereum network. In this way, we hope to, of course, attract the foundations of, again, this technology, the new protocols, the new platforms. And in fact, we at Blockchain Advisory are proud to announce that we have teamed up and are bringing to Malta one of the largest blockchain protocols in the world, the Waves protocol, the second largest ICO platform after Ethereum, and the largest blockchain protocol out of Russia, who are, again, engaged in various regulatory efforts to ensure that their protocol is geared towards mainstream use. Again, we're still very much at the beginning. And although the regulatory framework mostly enters into effect today, this is still just the very, very start. And again, we're not going to stop here, but if anything, we're going to speed up our efforts and ensure that, again, all our energy is focused towards making this new technology and bringing it into the mainstream. First of all, we are currently looking into how we can, again, give legal entity to DAOs, to certain structures which are built on blockchain technology through the creation of technology foundations. We will continue working and learning from the private industry, just as we have done when, of course, structuring this new framework. We understand that the private industry is normally years ahead of the public sector, and that, of course, we always tend to learn and gain from the private industry. There has also been the announcement of the creation of Malta's DLT marketing arm, TechMT. We want to show to the world what we are doing here in Malta, and of course, we also welcome any feedback and any form of international cooperation. We do understand and recognize that this technology is too disruptive, too massive for us to handle alone, which is why, of course, we welcome any feedback in this regard, and we look forward to working with all other jurisdictions with our same goal. Having said that, I would like to end on a patriotic note and remind everyone that tiny is mighty, and that the smallest EU member state has, of course, led efforts in this field. And just as I started, even though in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, the landscape might look very different to what we have today, always remember the 1st of November of 2018. Thank you.
Welcome to the Blockchain Island. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please give a warm welcome to the Prime Minister of this Blockchain Island, the Honourable Joseph Muscat, Prime Minister of Malta.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all, and thank you for being here with us at this very important gathering, which will discuss the lightning pace of change that is revolutionizing the world as we know it today. Welcome to a country that is trying to move at a very fast pace when compared to our peers. Since even the nimblest and most efficient of states cannot keep up with evolving technology and the speed of this fourth industrial revolution that is changing life as we know it, we're trying to do our best to be at the forefront. As we witness these changes happening around us, as a government, we could have taken two roads. Either to sit back and let the big waves of change settle down with the hope that it does as little damage as possible to us, or else prepare for it, building necessary breakwaters, canals, and making good use of the force of nature that this new technology is proving to be. I believe that nothing happens by coincidence. Certain factors fall into place at the right time, true. Yet, when opportunities come by, you need the right people and the surgical coolness to take quick, sometimes risky decisions, not to let ships sail. That is what happened with blockchain in Malta. The seed landed on very fertile soil. And as a government, we saw the opportunity to start watering carefully the seed to make sure that it grows in an organic way, yet building the blocks around it to make sure that when time is ripe, we start bearing fruit. We prepared the soil with the right ingredients to allow that the seeds bud. We took decisions. And that is essentially why I believe that we have become the center of such an important discussion on new technologies. For those of you who are in Malta for the first time, let me give you some background on our country before delving into the reason why we are here today. This week we presented our annual budget plan for 2019. Our economy has grown by an average of almost 6% every year since 2014, 3 times the average growth rate experienced by our EU peers. Our GDP growth is the largest of any EU member state right now. We are now experiencing for the first time ever a situation where we have virtually full employment. We are giving free healthcare to all our citizens. Schools are free. And we give each and every child from the age of 8 a tablet to use in class for educational purposes. This might surprise you, but we even pay our upper secondary and university students to study. In the past 4 years, we have also introduced universal free childcare for working mothers and fathers, a first worldwide. We keep increasing pensions year on year for our elderly and give opportunities to persons who suffer from disabilities. Despite this picture, I still believe that there is a sea of opportunity for us and that this is the land of opportunity for blockchain. It is because we are in a good place that we can come here and discuss the present with you. Some may call it the future, but I prefer calling it the present. Let's be frank, the debates we have ahead of us are huge, sometimes too abstract to understand because we are pushing our limits to imagine the unimaginable. Where can blockchain take us? The most known form of use for this technology remains the emergence of cryptocurrencies. Whether these will lead to less dependency on the banknote as we know it is something still difficult to predict, even though I went on record saying it's the future of money. But it has led to an important conversation on how we can change the way we trade internationally. There are big ethical and moral questions about cryptocurrencies, and how we can physically buy things through a number of binary combinations over a ledger. This is leading the world to rethink, at the least discuss, new ways on how we can move from the conservative institutions that govern us and govern the world right now, and do not want to rock the boat. And I find it fascinating that we're having this conversation at the time when politics is surrounded by people who want to build walls. Yet again, we are discussing a technology that tears down these walls. Here in Malta, we can have these discussions already. We put all cards on the table and asked ourselves whether we should simply look the other way or open up and let the markets take over. Or else, as governments, should we see how to harness the potential by applying the rules of the game? We went for the last option, and we are telling everyone that we are open for business, but within parameters we designed with all stakeholders. We now have the playing field designed with touch lines, goal lines, goalposts, and flags. We are now inviting people to come and play in our field. I mentioned cryptocurrencies as the foremost example of blockchain. Yet, the application of this technology, as we have discovered ourselves as a government, are truly unlimited. From healthcare to banks, from NGOs to the environment to financial services. The sky is the limit as long as the rules of the game are observed. That is why we have gained our reputation as the blockchain island. Our vision is to see the sector grow both in volume, but more so in finding new ways on how technology can improve the lives of people. Are we done yet? Of course we're not. And what's next? That is the question we ask ourselves each and every day in our offices. Like every company, we can only find opportunities if we are out there on the lookout. That is the question I'm sure this conference will be asking. It is exactly because we are humans that we ask this question. True, Sophia will be addressing the blockchain summit. Will there be a time when humans will be invited to speak at a conference organized by robots then? Will we ourselves be building machines which will lead to our own extinction? I believe that we are more intelligent than that, maybe. Let us once again put all the cards on the table. These are the questions we're already asking here in Malta. I want Malta to be a hub for AI innovation and new intelligent technologies and their regulation. Are we ready to discuss parameters that give clear clarity to our goals? That is the discussion that we as government are having, maybe in advance of other governments across the world. That is the discussion we are currently having in Malta, and my message to you all is that we want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas. We are a fertile land for opportunities and for discussion. This country has solid foundations and is ready to make the conditions right for the next leap in robotics, AI, IoT, to go wherever our imagination can take us. I have only one word of caution. We like to do things the right way, within clear and sensible parameters, not rushing our way through, but doing them at the right pace. Because our philosophy is to be honest brokers where we all know where we stand with each other. Let us think big, and together I think we can do the next leap. Thank you very much, and good luck for the conference.
Battle of the jurisdictions. Malta, Switzerland, Estonia, and South Korea go head-to-head in this animated battle between jurisdictions. Jonathan Gallia for Malta, Blockchain Advisory. Karen Loretz for Switzerland, MME. Dmitry Chirkin for Estonia, Humanic. Seungmin Jasmine Jung for South Korea, Jipyeong. Moderated by Gregory Klumov. Stasis.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Check, check. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Now, this is quite a packed event, right? And besides roads, Malta probably needs better conference centers, better hotels. I'm sure you're all impressed how this island develops. And I have here on the panel several experts who can share valuable opinions on different jurisdictions and how blockchain legislation will be adapted through the world. So may I start with Jasmine? Jasmine, South Korea recently banned ICOs, and now there is like a full stop on these activities. Do you think it's going to be lifted sometime soon?
Well, South Korea was actually one of the first countries to embrace the blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Many of you may have heard of the term kimchi premium, which alluded to the price of cryptocurrencies in Korea being higher than in other countries. This actually, however, made the government scared because they were afraid that the mom-and-pop investors would be scammed or would lose on their savings. So what did the government do? They started banning everything. And one of the things they banned was ICO activities, especially security tokens being issued in Korea. This was promulgated in September last year, and it has been going on for a while. The problem the politicians found out is that it really didn't stop Korean companies from doing ICOs. What it happened is that Korean companies started to go overseas to do ICOs, making a lot of money for Singaporean law firms, consulting agencies, and the Korean government realized that if they continued with this ban, Korea would be at the back end of the blockchain technology. So they are revisiting ICOs and cryptocurrencies in general. The rumor, which is quite official, is that there will be new regulations that will be coming out in November, and hopefully, although I can't predict with certainty, hopefully they will provide some clarity on the direction of ICOs and cryptocurrencies in Korea.
Okay, that's clearly important to avoid regulatory arbitrage, because once some jurisdictions endorse a business-friendly legal framework and others just deny or prohibit doing business, so entrepreneurs will immediately go to the particular country with more favorable jurisdictions, right, exploiting this arbitrage. Dmitry, what is happening in Estonia? It was one of the first countries that endorsed crypto-friendly legislation, but still not much businesses managed to open bank accounts there or created companies. Can you cast some light on that jurisdiction?
Well, technically, yes. Estonia was one of the first jurisdictions to welcome DLT technology and blockchain and crypto. And I'm quite not sure whether not so many companies are established in Estonia. Based on the PwC recent newsletter, more than 31 successful ICO only in the second half of this year were run through the Estonia. I'm the international transaction lawyer, and only thing I cared when I advise my clients to go to a particular jurisdiction is the tax efficiency. So Estonia has 0 VAT and 0 corporate income tax, which is brilliant. While we are running out to make our token not the security token, we go to utility token, which has tax implications. So in Estonia, 0 tax implications. Estonia has a relevantly low cost to set up a company and the company maintenance. The key feature to open the bank account is to have the substance in the particular jurisdiction where your office is. And in Estonia, the price for setting up the real substance, real office, is very low. And now lots of developers and other IT companies move their offices to Estonia due to the fact that personal income tax are also low. So I think based on the tax regime, it's quite good. Also, we have the licenses in Estonia for crypto trading, for exchanges, and the price is also quite low, but those licenses are granted by the European Union country. That's why they can be passported to other European jurisdictions. So,
okay. Karen, you're from Switzerland, right? So Switzerland was also at the forefront of this initial footsteps, right? And they tried out to approach digital assets, classifying them into several tokens, which I think is really a right way to do it. You have to figure out that utility tokens do not require like heavy regulation, and security tokens obviously regulate as usual security, so we need to classify somehow. But since Switzerland made these comments, it put quite a halt on multiple activities that appeared in the country. So what is currently happening, and when will Swiss companies will be able to open bank accounts for the ICO funds they raised?
Yeah, good question. I mean, what happened to Switzerland? In February this year, the regulator FINMA issued ICO guidelines, and as you said, they made a classification of tokens. So there are payment token, utility token, and asset token. And since then, you haven't heard anything. But that's only from an outside perspective, to be honest, because when you're inside, a lot is really happening. So this ICO guidelines, or the ball was actually rolling since then, since they published the ICO guidelines, because there was a lot of legal certainty as of from then. People knew what kind of token they're actually issuing, or what kind of token they want to issue. They had some guidelines, and also banks, which is very important part. The banks felt more comfortable because finally the regulator gave some guidelines and also a statement. So it's also about a statement and not only given guidelines. And and since then, the Swiss Bankers Association also gave out some guidelines. It's a self-regulatory organization on how to onboard, let's say, crypto millionaires or crypto companies. Also, this is a very important milestone. The banks feel now more and more comfortable to actually onboard crypto companies and also ICO companies. That's what we see as lawyers, as law firm, as MME, that a lot of banks are actually approaching us and asking for advice in this field. Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan, you are shaping your career particularly about cryptocurrencies regulation and AML, actually, right? And AML has been the big subject, big topic. Do you think it's possible to continue winning this war against regulators, that cryptocurrency is in a sense a digital cash that is traceable, and it is better than cash in the sense that with cash it's impossible to trace big amounts of it, but with digital currencies there is always a blockchain that is out there and everybody can go out and see how the transactions went through?
Incidentally, in 2014, when I started writing my doctorate of law thesis on the subject of Bitcoin and its effect on money laundering laws, naturally I had no resources to refer to back then, but when I was studying the technology and the way it worked, particularly, of course, in relation to Bitcoin, I could see that effectively the regulators could potentially have something on their hands which is much, much more efficient and better at tracking and tracing financial transactions. And in fact, in my conclusion to my thesis, I stated that although blockchain technology, in relation to Bitcoin particularly, utilizes a method where you know the transactions, but not necessarily know the persons behind transactions, it is far easier to deal with than the current system where you know the persons, but you don't know the transactions. Because effectively, in order to find out who the persons are behind the transactions, then all you need to do is collect information about them and associate them with a particular wallet address. And I wonder how long it will take regulators around the world to realize that they actually have Pandora's box right in front of them. So essentially, yes, I believe that, again, blockchain technology will lend itself to the fight against money laundering, but I think the worst enemy of money laundering is the current regulation itself. When I was studying for my thesis, I came across the words international cooperation multiple times. International cooperation here, we should work with other jurisdictions to stop the fight against money laundering, and so on and so forth. First of all, where's the international cooperation? Decades after we started talking about regulating anti-money laundering. Secondly, how come in 2018 we're still requesting certain documents such as proof of address in a world which is largely becoming nomadic? We're all digital nomads. So why are we still trying to make a square peg fit into a round hole? So I think rather than trying to see whether technology is a threat at this stage, I think we should see whether regulation is really a threat and try, of course, understand once and for all that regulation always has to follow technology, no matter what.
Okay, well, Maltese example basically already proving that this crypto-friendly, business-friendly legal framework is influencing local economy. Debt to GDP ratio is probably the lowest in Europe, and GDP growth rate is highest in Europe. So what do you guys think the last part of the puzzle to bring institutional investors really more involved in this space? Because it's crucial to understand that asset class can only live for a considerable period of time when institutional investors get interested in it. And there are multiple investment products being opened, created, allocated to the asset class to really classify it as a true member of liquid alternatives. So could you please, just starting from Jasmine's, tell your opinion, what do we lack to get more institutional guys involved in digital assets?
One phenomenon that we're seeing in this space is actually not decentralization, but a concentration of all the different functions in the cryptocurrency space, all being combined into one company or one institution. I'm sure many of you have heard of the pump and dump phenomenon, which is often being conducted in cryptocurrency exchanges. You also see cryptocurrency exchanges performing many functions, even some go into OTC transactions. And really, this is one of the reasons why institutional investors are actually afraid of going into this space, because they don't see the compliance measures that used to be in place with traditional financial institutions. And with those compliance measures comes professionalism or expertise. And that's what I think is necessary to be built and also to be regulated in order for financial institutions to gain more trust and maybe a little more comfort in coming into this space.
Okay. Dmitry?
Well, I think the lack of something seamless between crypto and fiat really prevents institutional investors.
That's what we do, actually.
Actually, yes. We all do this. For instance, I think the security token offering is something that institutional investors are waiting for. We are assisting certain companies and combine 22 national depository agencies in order to make kind of Euroclear on the blockchain. We also help our clients to set up the association, which will be like expert trading agency. Institutional investors need, let's say, the shift of responsibility. And if there will be the association or something that can bear the risk of fraud or something on your crypto counterparty, being, for example, a bank, that will be a perfect solution. So I think the security token, the, let's say, depository and shift of responsibility.
Okay, thanks. Karen?
Well, I don't want to talk about the institutional investor necessarily. I just want to explain in Switzerland how the whole landscape shifted from like startups and small companies to banks and big asset managers and even stock exchanges that are interested in engaging in blockchain technology, in crypto assets and so on. So there we see like a real shift from like small companies to, let's say, institutional investors or financial institutions actually that are interested in building on a solid blockchain technology as a basis. As you might have heard, the Swiss Stock Exchange published that they will build a Swiss digital exchange, so all on blockchain technology, which is quite revolutionary, I would say. And FINMA, the regulator, is now talking to the Swiss Stock Exchange how to best set it up and so on. So there we see that in the beginning it was more like small startups that wanted to engage in blockchain and crypto assets, and now it's really being a shift from big banks, even big banks, and the Swiss Stock Exchange that is moving into this direction. So.
Okay, Jonathan?
I think what investors and users alike need first and foremost is time. Time to understand this technology and time to allow the technology to mature further as well. I mean, blockchain technology, as we know it, is only 10 years old. So the internet took around 50 years in order to become mainstream. However, apart from that, I think we have to shift away from this whole utility concept versus securities and so on and so forth. I mentioned this in the past. But just because something has utility doesn't mean I'm going to use it. I mean, I might have a pickaxe over here, doesn't mean I'm going to use it. It has utility, but not for my own particular needs. So what we really need in order to attract investors is to start providing value. If we take a look at blockchain technology right now, I think its only use so far, as in terms of large-scale use, has been the issuance of cryptocurrencies. I haven't seen anything yet taking off in a spectacular fashion. If you take a look at Ethereum, the biggest dApp so far has been CryptoKitties, which of course says it all. So what we need is to start creating value to, of course, entice the mainstream users and investors to start believing in this technology and see how it can help, of course, shape their lives in a better way.
I would also like to add that education is very important. So we need to help people climb the learning curve of what this particular digital asset is, because even with the internet, as you said, it took really some time for people to figure out how it can change their lives for better, how information is being moved, right? So regardless of what's happening on the cryptocurrency markets right now and prices are falling, as you see, there is a significant investment going on in the industry. People allocating capital, hiring talent. Countries are starting to compete for this exciting marketplace. So, and this all will influence significantly and bring more development to the industry for the years to come. I think it's really important to keep a close track on what happens next. Of course, there'll be some regulatory arbitrage between jurisdictions, but hopefully European Union will figure it out and adopt some kind of global policy on the top level, how to address these digital assets. And conferences like this is very important because people can come and learn about this new exciting technology. With that, we're out of time. I would like you to thank our panelists, please. And yeah, have a very nice conference. There is a big conference center out there. You could meet the companies who operate in the space and learn from them. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about tax. How is trading and disposing of cryptocurrencies taxed in Malta? What are the possibilities to reduce the effective tax rate? The right setup for your blockchain business. Joseph Mircea, BDO, Malta.
Hi, good morning. I'm Joseph, tax partner at BDO, and in the next 10 minutes we'll be discussing tax. We'll be talking about tax. Tax is a particular topic which in the cryptocurrency environment is quite often forgotten. So what I'll be doing is I'll be giving you a very, very concise summary of what Malta, what is the Maltese tax treatment of transactions in cryptocurrencies. The Maltese Income Tax Act has two articles within it, the legal framework, which bring to tax transactions. Those which are of an income nature and transactions which are of a capital nature. The tax treatment of transactions which are of an income nature are quite simple, taxable. Transactions which are of a capital nature will be taxable only and exclusively if they fall within the parameters of the assets and the transactions which bring taxability. So if you have a property, a security, an interest in a partnership, or a beneficial interest in a trust, and you have a transaction of a capital nature, there's going to be a tax charge. If you had a close look at that particular article, Article 5, there's only one particular phrase, letter, word to be exact, which could potentially be subject to tax. Securities. So when we have security tokens and we have a capital transaction, we could potentially end up subject to tax. So what are securities? Securities are shares and stocks which participate in the profit of the company, so you have a right to a profit, to dividends, and which do not carry a fixed rate of return. Having said all this, what we need to do in order to establish taxability is whether we have a transaction of a trading nature, so the day-to-day trader is going to be taxable always. The hodler, the individual which is holding the crypto asset for a very long period of time, usually I tell my clients, ideally at least 18 months over, 1 year and a half over, you're going to be taxable only if you have a security. If your crypto asset is a utility token and it doesn't grant any rights to profits, you're going to be completely outside the scope of Maltese tax. So how do you distinguish between transactions which are of a trading nature and those which are of a capital nature? And this depends, obviously, on a number of things. In particular, what is your intention? What is the intention of the individual which is acquiring that particular token? In addition, is one needs also to look at the frequency. How frequently do I acquire and sell cryptocurrencies? What is the interval of time between the purchase and sales? And how close is this particular activity to what I usually do? So if I am a stock trader, an individual which is all the time trading on stock exchanges, it's going to be difficult to claim that I am investing by way of a capital nature in cryptocurrencies. When you combine all these 5, 6 different factors into one particular scenario, you will end up with an indication as to whether you have a transaction which is of a capital nature or a transaction which is of an income nature. As long as I'm trading, there is absolutely no way that I can avoid the Maltese tax net. If, however, I am able to classify my transaction as a transaction of a capital nature, I will most probably be able to avoid any Maltese tax, as long as I'm not selling a security token. Whenever I end up at a tax rate of 35%, which is extremely high, but upon a dividend distribution by that company to its shareholder, that could be a Maltese shareholder, foreign shareholder, a company, or an individual, that particular shareholder becomes entitled to a tax refund under the refundable tax credit system. That tax refund varies according to the type of income, but in the case of trading income from cryptocurrencies, it's going to be a 6th, 7th refund. So the company pays 35, but upon a dividend distribution, the shareholder is going to get back 30. What's fantastic about that system is that not only you end up with an effective tax rate of 5%, the time lapse between the tax payment and the refund is usually not longer than 2 weeks. Unless there's a problem with the bank coordinates, it's going to be between 10 days and 14 days. In the case of individuals, there is also the remittance basis of taxation. So individuals which are resident in Malta, but they do not have the intention of remaining resident in Malta forever, so they never acquire a Maltese domicile, those individuals are taxable in Malta only on income they derive from day trading in Malta, foreign source income they remit to Malta, but never on capital gains. So if you have an individual which is in Malta as a Maltese tax resident, but he has never acquired a Maltese domicile, so he doesn't have the intention of staying in Malta forever, that individual will always be outside the scope of Maltese tax on his foreign source capital gains. So what I've done in these 8 minutes is I gave a summary of what are the tax repercussions on trading in cryptocurrencies. Later on, in the video masterclass, I'll be discussing the VAT implications of carrying out an ICO, the VAT implications of trading in cryptocurrencies, and I will also be discussing what are the tax repercussions of carrying out an ICO, what is the point in time where that particular person, issuer, the case of an ICO, would need to collect tax and VAT on that particular transaction. Thank you for your attention.
Raising Capital 2019, the fully compliant ICO. Gordon Einstein, CKR Law.
I guess question number, okay, this is working. And the firm is now Crypto Law Partners because I've gone full blockchain and crypto. So just so you know, and once I get the happy clicker, we'll be in good shape. Fantastic. So I've been traveling around the world speaking at different blockchain and crypto conferences. I have to say this is the best attended conference I've seen for a year. And having gone to some other conferences, the trend has been slightly lower and lower attendances. This is amazing, the number of people here. So I want to give a big shout out to the people organizing the Blockchain Summit. Now, I'm going to do a quick, this is a half-an-hour presentation that I boiled down into 10 minutes. So I'm going to talk fast. I already talk fast. I'm going to talk even faster. If something is not clear or you want to catch me afterwards, I'm going to be here the next several days, and I'm happy to send you the deck. You won't miss out. Now, just taking a poll of the audience, who thinks that utility tokens are dead? Really? Okay, there's one brave soul. Who thinks that utility tokens are alive and well? Okay. Who's not going to raise their hands no matter what I say, even though I flew in all the way from Los Angeles? Okay, be nice to the guest. I would argue that the days of cowboy utility ICOs are over, but utility tokens are alive and well. In fact, they have to be. And that utility token ICOs are perfectly legitimate. You just need to understand the law. Now, I'm, of course, approaching this from a United States perspective, but as some of the previous speakers covered, these concepts sort of echo throughout the token and ICO ecosystem, so they're good to be aware of. All right, U.S. Attorney, I talk fast. This is a cut version. I'm happy to share. There you go. I always have to get this disclaimer. I'm a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer, probably. Number 4 is the most important one. Don't break the law, in case anyone was unclear. Okay, moving right along. So every avid Instagram user in this audience knows that there's 2 terms or 2 acronyms that get used all the time. There's FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You can say that's what Microsoft tried to do to Linux 10 years ago, if any of you remember that. And then there's the other one, which is a little bit more popular. That's FOMO. That's fear of missing out. There's a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about utility tokens, but everyone has FOMO because they wish it was 2015, 2016, and they want to get in on it. So the security token offerings are sort of the new hot way maybe to get in. STO's security token offerings are legitimate. I'm doing a bunch of them, but do not leave behind the so old and so seasoned ICO. That's Jamie Dimon. I think he's the chairman of JP Morgan, who was talking down Bitcoin. He definitely was trying to spread the FUD. Meanwhile, everyone wants a Lamborghini, and that's FOMO. Okay, now let's just start with a basic concept that somehow some security regulators and some security attorneys can't seem to wrap their heads around. Does anyone in this room think that every single thing on the planet is a security? Good, because many regulators apparently think that every single thing on this planet is a security. That is not the case. Right? There are many other legally defined categories that have their own rights, purposes, economic functions. There's commodities, there's currencies, there's software licenses, there's shoes, there's dogs. There's even the Dogecoin dog. Okay, I don't know if Dogecoin is a security or not, but the dog is not a security. Keep that in mind. Also, there seems to be a lot of confusion about this. If you have a non-security object or asset, the mere act of tokenizing it does not create a security. Okay, if you have a diamond and you don't add any kind of special sauce to it, and you merely tokenize it, you didn't automatically just create a security. There seems to be a lot of confusion about that. So the tokenized asset may, depending on the jurisdiction, be an asset token or utility token, but it's not necessarily a security token. Also, keep this in mind. A lot of people claim or offer their tokens as securities because they, quote unquote, want to be safe. Well, if the underlying token or the asset behind the token is not a security, that's fraud. You're misrepresenting the nature of the thing you're selling. So not only should you not assume everything is a security, to overly aggressively define everything as a security is misleading to the buyer. Okay, and to sort of respond to a lot of securities attorneys out there, the fact that something is not regulated as a security does not mean that it's not regulated. Everything in life is regulated, especially in the United States. You can't breathe without it being regulated. So there's regulations on commodities, there's regulations on software licenses, usually by state attorney generals. There's regulations on dogs. There's regulations on currencies, obviously. So the argument that if it's not subject to regulation as a security, people will be vulnerable is a little bit of a non sequitur argument because everything is regulated. All right. And yes, this will all lead into how you can do a compliant ICO, but it's important to drill into the details. I want to remind the room, and again, I'm happy to share this deck. I do it all the time. I want to remind the room that in every developed economy, and especially in the United States, the term security is not some fuzzy common law concept. It is a defined term. There's words on paper that were voted into effect by the US Congress, and that is the law. It's not what someone else says it is. So the main statute that's the basis of US securities law is the Securities Act of 1933, and of course, most of you also know the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Well, it's very helpful because the Securities Act has a big section 2 with all these useful definitions. The very first definition is the definition of a security, which means you don't have to go necessarily to the SEC and say, hey, is this a security? Sometimes you don't want to ask a question because you don't want to hear the answer. So security is a defined term. The gray zone, the confusion creeps in. I'm not going to cover the whole thing, but in this concept of an investment contract, that's the analysis that the whole world is going crazy over, trying to decide whether or not this thing that's not a clear security, it's not clearly a stock, it's not clearly a bond, is this somehow magically an investment contract? And therefore, does it fall within the definition of a security? Therefore, the SEC and another jurisdiction, security regulator, would have jurisdiction. Despite what certain regulators and attorneys would say, investment contract is a defined term. And it's defined by the Howey case. Who's heard of the Howey case and the Howey test? If you're in tokens and crypto, have Howey printed on a small card and carry it with you in your wallet or your purse. Okay? There's a 4-pronged test that I'm not going to go completely through. I have plenty of videos on YouTube. Each one of those 4 elements must be true for the thing you're looking at to be an investment contract and therefore security. When you're analyzing a token and you're trying to figure out what the heck this thing is, and it's not clearly a note, a bond, or a commodity, whatever, you have to apply the Howey test. And if the Howey test, any one of those things is not true, for example, it's not true with Bitcoin because there's no common enterprise, and it may not be true with Ethereum because maybe it's decentralized enough that there's no common enterprise, it's not a security. Here's the big point. If it's not a security and you're not committing fraud, the SEC and other securities regulators do not have jurisdiction. They do not have the legal power to act. At least in the US, the SEC cannot regulate commodities. That's underneath the CFTC, Commodities and Futures Trading Commission. The SEC, despite what it thinks, can't declare war for the United States. It can't raise taxes. It can't declare a new national park. It can only regulate in the area of securities. So just following the whole logic train, if something does not meet the legal definition of a security, it must be something else. And if that something else is in the nature of a software license, that's a perfectly valid thing to sell where you do not need to register it with the SEC. You don't need to find an exemption with the SEC. You don't have to play this sort of song and dance. Okay, now, how do you actually use this? What do you actually do? Actually, one little thing I need to say first. Where people get messed up is this investment contract concept. When does that kick in? Well, if you have a token that's going to provide access to a platform, for example, Ethereum now or Filecoin, that's fine. It's usually clear that that's a software license or something like that and not a security. But the consensus almost all over the world is that before that token becomes functional, if people are buying those tokens and giving money to the platform so the platform can develop itself and make those tokens functional, then for that brief period of time, that pre-functional token may be a security. Right? It's kind of weird. This thing that doesn't really change its nature can start off as a security and evolve into something else. I think it's the first time that's happened in law. But where people get messed up and where the reason people think that utility tokens and ICOs of utility tokens are dead is most of these companies that got into trouble, most of them that received subpoenas, were selling pre-functional tokens to the public, taking the money, trying to build the platform, maybe building the platform, but the point of view of the SEC and others, as expressed in the Munchie order, the Munchie case, if you Google it, is that these pre-functional tokens, at least while they're pre-functional, will be treated like securities. Now, back in ancient times, mid-2017, the SEC came out and they said, oh, by the way, world, just so we're clear, this thing that you're calling a token may in fact be a security, and you should also be aware that pre-functional tokens are especially going to be a security, even if later on they won't be a security once they're functional. Then my favorite SEC commissioner, Hinman, I have my own personal favorite SEC commissioner. I don't know about you guys. My favorite SEC commissioner, Commissioner Hinman, came out and he gave a speech, a presentation. The SEC did not release something clear you could rely on, but he did give a speech. And he explained that even if you take the case of Ethereum, what did Vitalik do? What did the rest of them do? They had this idea for an Ethereum virtual machine, for this unstoppable, uncensorable virtual machine. He didn't have it built yet. So they set up a process whereby people could submit Bitcoin and get back these pre-functional, not usable Ethereum tokens. That's an ICO. There's a good argument that Ethereum was a security. So why isn't Ethereum banned? Because the US didn't want to mess with it, is the real answer. But the answer that Hinman later on gave was because it's evolved enough, it's become decentralized enough that even if it started off as a security, it's not now. Which means, by definition, not all tokens are securities. By definition. All right, so what do you do? And again, this is a half-an-hour presentation that I'm now being told to conclude. What do you do? Well, you set up your company in an ICO-friendly jurisdiction. I'll give you a hint which one I'm recommending because we're at the Malta Blockchain Summit and in general. Malta Co. sets up in Malta. Suppose Malta Co. is setting up the Malta Chain blockchain platform, and it's going to issue tokens, these Maltos, that once they're fully functional, they won't be securities under US law, Malta law, any law. But they need funds in order to set this up and get them from pre-functional to functional. What do? Well, you do not do what Munchie and the rest of these did. You don't sell free trading pre-functional tokens. That's a securities violation. What you can do in the US and other places is sell securities, whether it's a SAFT, a locked down pre-functional token, or some kind of indirect interest, which I can go over if you want to hit me up outside, to accredited investors under a proper exemption. Okay, if you use a proper exemption from a security sale, and I have a whole presentation on YouTube about this, you won't get busted. Then, this is worth $100,000. Take a picture of this, write this down, do whatever you need to do. When you set up your company's URLs or your websites, you're going to have a main URL for your project only. That's going to go on in time and last forever. All right. Maltaco.mt, okay, the top level URL for Malta. That's for the project. You do not mention the ICO or the tokens there. Then you set up a temporary website, for your token sale. And you have two subdomains, two sub-URLs. say us.maltacodetokens.mt, and then maybe world.maltacodetokens.mt. And you redirect IP addresses, you ask people where they're from, you try to get proof. You send US investors here, you send non-US investors there. That way, there's no conflating your token sale website with your project website. And if you have to stop your token sale, that means you do not necessarily need to stop your project website. Okay, that happened to Munchie and a whole bunch of other ones. Have two different root domains. Don't make your token sale a subdomain of the main domain. All right. Then, of course, the question is, when does a platform become functional enough that a token stops being a security and starts to be a utility? When? You know, it's like Microsoft Office is never done. Google Apps is never done. It's not like a house where you can point to it and say, this is done. When is a platform functional enough? When do tokens have enough functionality that they cross through that gray zone safely to the other side, and you can go, okay, whatever started off as, now it's clearly a utility token. Well, the analogy I always use is, you know, in China, they have so much wealth that they need to invest. They're building these huge ghost cities, massive cities with empty buildings, parks, facilities, you know, they're beautiful, and no one lives there, okay? That's like a lot of these ICO platforms, right? They don't even have the buildings, right? When do you know that your platform is functional? The answer is when your platform is populated and people are actually using it, okay? Now, you have a chicken and egg problem here. If you want to get your platform populated and get people using it, your token is a security and you can't generally release it, how do you get them on the platform? How do you get the first pioneers onto your platform safely without violating security laws? Well, and avoid the Chinese Go City situation. Here's what you do, and I'm doing this with several clients, and it seems to work, and people are responding to it. You do a selective airdrop of your tokens to a defined early adopter community. You're not spamming people's wallets because some people are of the opinion that if you do an airdrop or give your tokens away for free, those aren't securities. That's not the case. Sorry. Okay, there's a little bit of legal twisting that the SEC is doing, and they say if you use the tokens, you're providing value in return for those tokens. Therefore, they're not really airdrops. They're really giving it for value. But you don't airdrop to everyone. You find and you form an earlier adopter community. You give people tokens in exchange for them beta testing and working on your product. And you want to have them really do that. By the way, and the more nonprofits you have in your earlier adopter community, for example, a UN agency that's out there to save kids, and you have a platform that's related to their function, if you're giving them tokens in exchange for them working on the platform, giving you feedback so you can improve it, that's a way to get people on the platform without doing a general distribution or ICO and without doing an airdrop to the whole world. And you have restrictions on the tokens. They can only transfer them to other early adopters. But that community starts growing as the platform matures. So over the next 6 months or so, you keep on expanding your early adopter group and keep it outside the United States. Then, once that platform is usable, it's functional, people are actually using it because they're using the functionality that they want to get out of it, then you can do a non-US utility token ICO. Now, people are concerned, well, wait a second. What if in the aftermarket those tokens end up in the US? What if you have over 2,000 US investors who own it, and now you're publicly traded in the US? The answer is no, you're not. We're being very conservative here. But those tokens, by definition, people are using them if they don't pass the Howey test, so their utility. If people are actually using them in real life for their function, they're software licenses. They aren't securities. Right, and again, I'm real crashing on time. Almost certainly going to start traded on non-US exchanges. Then another 6 months or so pass. You start converting your SAFs or your Reg D tokens or sales to the US into the functional tokens. Well, that's not a securities issuance. Those are utility tokens now, and time has passed, and that platform has been seasoned. I bet that at Malta, your tokens start getting traded on US exchanges, Coinbase, whatever. Then consider, once it's clear that the platform is not involving a security, and they're actually using it in real life, consider you can then do actually an ICO or secondary sale in the United States also. There's no rule, you just need to do one ICO. You can have a secondary CO, tertiary CO. You can keep on rolling your token sales. It is going to be almost impossible for any securities regulator to argue at that point that that token is a security. There would be a rebellion on their hands. So I moved fast, I went slightly over time. I want to thank you all, and I'm happy to give the deck or answer questions. Thank you.
The new decentralized globe. Blockchain has taken the world by storm, changing the traditional business values of the past, igniting an era of decentralization. Mike Butcher, TechCrunch. Mark Berniger, Crypto Finance.
Don't need it. You got that, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you do? How are you? Are you having a good time in Malta? My name is Mike Butcher. I'm a journalist and editor of TechCrunch, which has 17 million readers around the world, based out of San Francisco, with kind of a strange setup here, so some of you over here. And next to me is Mark Berniger, who's a hero of Web 2.0. Who remembers Web 2.0? Mark, you really were. You did a fantastic project company called Amiando, which was the Eventbrite of its era. That was Web 2.0. What is Web 3?
Yeah, I think, welcome everybody. I flew in directly from Crypto Nation, Switzerland, and I'm the first time on Blockchain Island, Malta, so really exciting to be here. And as Mike just mentioned, I think in the Web 2.0 area, it was all about democratization, information, the digital revolution, which affected mainly information technology. And I think now with the Web 3.0, it's really going into the real world. Technology is now really changing not just information, it's really changing the real world.
The original vision for the internet, obviously, was created by DARPA, by the American government. And that was, effectively to withstand a nuclear war. When Tim Berners-Lee invented the web, that was meant to be decentralized. It was meant to be a world where anyone in the world could run their own website, their own web server. It was effectively going to democratize the world. What happened after that? Why did we end up with the so-called GAFA, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting fact. And I mean, when we had a chat yesterday evening, honestly, I was also not really aware about the fact that originally the main idea of the internet as we use it today was really to have a decentralized, immune, without middlemen in between system. And what we have right now is, I would say, mostly the opposite. And now I hope the ultimate challenge and the ultimate hope in this new blockchain-based economy is that we will go back to the roots, back to the early days of the internet, where it was about decentralizing the whole existing system.
So what are we getting underneath it? What do we actually mean by decentralization? What is the fundamental shift going on here?
I think the biggest differentiator is that it's just taking away power from a few very powerful, very selected parties, and it gives it back. It sounds always a little bit silly, back to the masses. But I think that's ultimately what decentralization means. You really can be part of a system without being big, old, based in certain countries, and I think that's a huge game changer. And as you just mentioned, that was the original idea of the internet.
You're obviously exited from Amiando, you set up Berniger Ventures, you've become a serial investor, and you were a very early player in the crypto world, setting up a number of conferences in Switzerland. And it's ironic in a way, isn't it, that Switzerland is very decentralized itself with its system of cantons. Why did Zug, for instance, become such a big issue in the blockchain and crypto world? And of course, now this is happening in Malta. What's it particular about these jurisdictions that shifts people here?
I think one of the reasons is literally you had Vitalik Buterin and all the early Ethereum guys and also some of the core developers of Bitcoin were just living in Zug. I mean, you met them in Starbucks and it was not a big thing. So that was like in the early days. I joined in 2012 when I got my first Bitcoin, and it was really a world full of geeks, full of passionate people. There were no speculators. It was really just a tech-driven community. And as you just mentioned, I think Switzerland as a quite decentralized, very federalistic country, we have some kind of blockchain-based mindset in our blood, I think. And it's great to see that this whole movement is now spreading all over the world.
Zurich and Zug was an early player. You had Vitalik Buterin creating Ethereum out of Zug there. And now the world it's actually moving around the world. It's huge, obviously, in Asia as well. You're an investor. What are the things that you're looking for as investing in projects, investing in do you invest in new types of protocols, or do you invest in sort of more real-world applications?
I mean, at Crypto Finance Group, we are more into the asset management space, so we don't do underlying venture investments. But personally, I think, and I always say the same, for me, the game doesn't change just because the technology changes. It's all about supporting passionate entrepreneurs with the vision to change something on a big scale. And it doesn't matter if it's blockchain-based, if it's tech-based, or is it something in the food space. It's all about people behind, passionate people, really with a drive and an entrepreneurial mindset to really change something to the good.
What are the main problems do you see that the industry faces in the next couple of years?
I mean, we are already in a different time at the moment. I mean, I remember we were already on stage in, let's say, different phases, and it was all about Bitcoin to 200,000 and whatever. I think that's absolutely irrelevant, because also the price of the Nasdaq back then was not really an indication about what really changed during these times. And that's why I don't care about, I mean, I care about the price of all these coins, but it's not about the price of all these coins, it's about the underlying technology. And I think at the moment we are in an after-hype cycle, but behind the scenes, I think we see some of the most exciting things happening without being reflected in the price of a shit coin, because it doesn't matter. But I think we're really in a very exciting time at the moment.
So you don't think that crypto prices affect the actual technology development?
I mean, it helps certain projects to create and especially execute their big vision. But ultimately, I mean, I think it's good that you now kick out most of the purely speculative-driven players, because they're not in for the technology and for the big picture. They're just purely speculating. And I think that normally is not the foundation of a long-term sustainable development.
So do you feel, therefore, that next year will be, shall we say, get real time?
I think, I mean, we also chatted about it yesterday. I mean, honestly, as long as we talk about technology and some tiny nitty-gritty stuff around, that's good for the inner circle, but the end consumer, they want to have real use cases, and real use cases mean it's better, cheaper, nicer, better looking, more efficient than something which is existing right now. Nobody cares about the TPC protocol, right? Everybody of us uses it all the time, but nobody really cares about it, and I think we're in a similar stage at the moment in the whole blockchain space. I think as soon as we read front page relevant stuff where you don't read about blockchain anymore, but about the services which are used, then we reach the tipping point, and that will take some more time.
Finally, we're running out of time, but I love to play this game with people because I was covering the internet in the 90s. What year are we in now? Are we in 1993, 94, 95, 96, 2004? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, and again, don't look at the price of Bitcoin. It's just part of the whole story. I think we're around 1998.
1998.
To get a concrete number.
Right, hands up who thinks we're in 1998.
Nobody.
One person? Okay. Who thinks we're in 2000, just before the crash? One person. Not very...
Yeah,
I think they're a bit
audience.
shy, aren't they?
Audience.
They're a bit shy. Well, Mark, what are you going to be doing here?
What's your view, by the way?
I think we're in 96.
Okay, perhaps everybody else is also in 96. Who's
Exactly,
in 96?
maybe they are. What are you going to be doing for the rest of the conference?
Yeah, I wanted to explore also a little bit Malta, so I think there are also other things than just hanging around here. But also, if you have anything interesting, please approach me, and I'm around till tomorrow. Yeah, looking forward.
Well, and I'm from TechCrunch. I'm covering startups and investors in the space. Otherwise, have a great day, everybody. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Transparency versus the right to be forgotten. Blockchain has the potential to solve many of the transparency issues of current data storing solutions. But how does it relate to the ongoing EU debate about the right to be forgotten? Adam Vaziri, BlockPass. Diane Bugeya, Camilleri Preziosi. Ian Gauci, GTG Advocates. Thibaut Verbiste, DS Advocates. Antonio Guillo, Fenech and Fenech. Moderated by Eva Skornichkova, Cybersecurity Advisor.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many people here, and I would also like to welcome my colleagues here at the panel. As you know, we will be discussing the data privacy, GDPR. Have you ever heard GDPR, these 4 letters? You know what it's about, because during last 2 years it was one of the most searched word on Google, for example. So I just would like to start with the statement what Tim Cook, as an Apple CEO, made 2 weeks ago on the conference of the data privacy commissioners. And he basically said that personal information is becoming weaponized, with the businesses misusing information on preferences, behavior, and more. It's being used against citizens with military efficiency, and the trade of information has become a data industrial complex. We are here on the blockchain conference, and I believe that the blockchain is one of very efficient tool just to decentralize the data from just one entity or one individuals or from governments. It obviously has a lot of challenges, and we would like to discuss them with you. What blockchain can have with respect to the data privacy, what can bring. And there are a lot of questions around the blockchain, how the blockchain technology can be compliant, fully compliant with GDPR. And does the GDPR apply to the public blockchain, for example? Jan, can you answer?
I would say yes. It applies to the public blockchain at different levels. It applies to the public blockchain on a conceptual level when somebody is coding the blockchain, so he has an intent. He is going to anticipate what the processing is going to be about, so there are particular obligations which kick in. It applies to blockchain as well. It applies as well to GDPR. If there are no exemptions, there are no household exemptions, so it's applicable. It would apply as well, depending on the service that ride over their blockchain, because public blockchain, to a certain extent, being totally decentralized and permissionless, is like a road. And on that road, other activities, vehicles can transmute. So from that angle, public blockchain attracts a lot of GDPR elements. As a matter of fact, it's very difficult to say that you have a totally compliant, even private blockchain, totally compliant GDPR blockchain, because it has a lot of different elements, facets, and even the way the GDPR is crafted allows a lot of freedom for interpretation. But to put it bluntly, yes, public blockchain and GDPR are, to a certain extent, they have to live together.
Okay. Then there are other questions. We know when GDPR just works with the terms controllers and processors. And who are the data controllers and who are the processors in the blockchain technologies, Antonio?
I think the jury is still out when we're talking about public permissionless blockchains. I think we shouldn't focus on the technology per se, but how the technology is used. If a bank
is using a cloud service to carry out certain processing, okay, it's quite clear that the processing is still linear. We have the data controller, which is the bank, and we have the cloud service provider, which might be a processor. When we're talking about a private blockchain, that reality, because it might still be linear, the processing, it doesn't really change. I think the challenges lie when we're talking about public permissionless blockchains, where it is still being debated who the controllers or the processors are. What functionalities should a node have within that public blockchain to make it either a controller or a processor? We haven't received a lot of guidance yet. GDPR is still very fresh. It's still being challenged already with these new technologies, but I believe it will survive. It will just be a question of having time for the regulators and the authorities, for the data protection authorities to catch up. But when we're talking about data controllers and data processors in a public permissionless blockchain, definitely we need to look at a case-by-case situation. There will be, or there could be situations where every node could be considered as being a joint controller. There would be situations where one cannot actually figure out who the controller is. There are already questions whether the providers of the protocols or the smart contracts are data processors or not. So I think it's very difficult to pigeonhole who is the data controller and the data processor at this very early stage. But as Ian rightly said, I think the commandments enshrined in GDPR will sufficiently manage to address this challenge, but it might be a little bit too early yet.
As you probably know, we know that the regulators are still not very active with respect to the interpretation of GDPR for the blockchain, but the first one who published, the quite good summary on the blockchain is the French regulator. Our next panelist, who unfortunately is not able to attend this event today, Thibault, was very closely working with the French regulator. So if you need more information, what, for example, the French regulators think about the controllers and processors, because, for example, they say that they consider miners also as a processor, so they have a certain responsibilities from the GDPR perspective. The next question would be to Diane. What do you think are the solutions for the crypto community?
Yeah, I think when we speak about the sort of the difficulties with marrying blockchain with data privacy issues, I think we focus specifically on 4 data protection principles which might come at odds with the blockchain technology. And essentially, these would be the legitimacy of processing, so the right to be forgotten or the right of erasure, the accuracy of the data, so essentially when you need to remediate data, when you need to rectify the data, what do you do? And then the confidentiality of it, obviously, the fact that it's available for everyone irrespective of the consent. And lastly, the purpose limitation principle. So obviously the necessity principle that is enshrined in GDPR, there might be an issue when it comes to the purpose for which it was collected no longer being present. So with those principles in mind, I think there are 2 main solutions which the crypto community has come up with, and that would be, the first one would be hashing, so cryptographic hashing, which essentially allows the hash to be distant sort of from the personal data, which would be kept on an external database, which would be managed by a controller. And that would address the data minimization, the anonymization part of it. And to render it even more anonymous, there is also the insertion of salts, so salted hashes, which introduce yet another random variable in the mix, and therefore, again, distance it even more and anonymize the data even more. The second solution would be encryption, and essentially having the keys themselves being deleted or being removed, which renders the personal data itself inaccessible. Again, as my colleagues rightly mentioned, these are not really tried and tested solutions, so we're still waiting for official guidance from the regulators on this, and whether the principle of data erasure, for example, is satisfied by rendering the data permanently inaccessible by deleting the keys, for example. But the Article 29 Working Party did mention hashes, for example, as a tool to anonymize data. So there is that sort of appreciation of these factors as well.
This is exactly what the French regulator also just stressed, in their analysis on the blockchain, that the encryption is one of the solutions.
Yeah, so I think it's really and truly embracing the concept of the privacy by design principle, which is enshrined in the GDPR, and trying to come up with a solution that addresses the GDPR principles, but obviously adapting that to the crypto community and their needs in using and working with blockchain technology.
And there is a very frequent questions around blockchain, and this is the right to be forgotten, because this is one of the rights that are, we as a subject rights, we have according to GDPR. What do you think, Adam, about the right to be forgotten versus blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear people comment on this, but I think the main point is being missed, which is blockchain is about peer-to-peer interaction. It's about decentralization, what we do not have currently on the internet. Currently, our data is held by people that we do not control. And GDPR was designed because the internet was broken. It was trying to fix not blockchain, but the existing state of the internet as it is today. The fact that Facebook knows more about you than you even know about yourself. The fact that credit card companies may know a lot more about your credit history than you will ever know. And so the point is that blockchain is there in fact to provide the technological solution that GDPR does not offer. GDPR is just regulation. What we're talking about is fairly academic. What really matters is about enforcement. What impact does that have on Facebook? Are we as citizens really going to be empowered by this regulation? And for me, what I believe, and I've been in blockchain for over 4 years as a lawyer observing this space, I believe it is that technological solution to empower citizens over their data. And I believe it so much that I've invested all my time in creating a startup to create that technology. With blockchain, with the ability to store your own data, to have a self-sovereign identity, it sounds almost nonsensical, but it is possible, that you could be sovereign over your own data, that you could be sovereign over yourself in a data-driven world. That with blockchain, you can permission other people, and then you can depermission those other people, and have the certainty, the mathematical certainty of cryptography to depermission, and even to force the deletion of that data through smart contracts. And that is the beauty of blockchain. Blockchain comes in at a point where we, as even regulators are not even empowered to reset the balance in the internet. The power play between the data-driven world and citizens that become, just the objects of data, rather than citizens and consumers within an internet, that they should be a major stakeholder of and core and central to that internet as it burgeons. So for me, I have the absolute belief that blockchain is the solution. It's not GDPR. In fact, blockchain is the technological incarnation of GDPR.
Yeah. This is what I also believe, and it's my dream, that all my data, all my localization data, all my searches will be in my own block, and I will decide who is using, who will be using my data. I know that you are smiling, Jan. I know this is very naive, but...
It's not naive. No, it's not naive.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, certain things are correct. But it's not a panacea either. the same thing was said when the internet came about, information society. Certain intermediaries got wiped away, new intermediaries evolved. Let's take the example of hashing. The initial blockchain, hashing, okay, even the cryptographic keys originated from the person, both pairs. So to a certain extent there, it's a principle of self-sovereignty, which is never absolute. Now there are intermediaries, so that even changes the dynamics of what is a public key. Public key in that sense can be personal data, because there is an intermediary. I would say that I endorse his principle, but we have to see it conceptually from two different levels. GDPR protects the individual from an angle of self-sovereignty as well. However, it protects the current environment, the silos, creating rules. There I agree. Blockchain, to a certain extent, builds as well on the same principle, that is self-sovereignty, but in a different manner. You empower the individual with his identity, with control over his data, with a means to share that data. And in what particular fashion? Based on legal parameters. That's why self-sovereignty is not absolute. So to a certain extent, this self-sovereignty imbued by blockchain shakes, okay, removes the existing silos. That is the main difference. However, these two constellations will still work together. They will meet. And the baseline is that there will not be an absolute decentralized world, this intermediate world. We're seeing it even right now. There will be intermediaries. So there, the baseline would be that you need, to a certain extent, all countries, not only CNIL, the French, because they start having problems. Who interprets proportionality in a particular manner? Who interprets firm? For example, the French are quite robust in the legislation. The German are more flexible, even ICO. They're more flexible on proportionality. That is wrong. Because if we want blockchain to be the next medium with data protection principles, then we need to have a common ground, a common understanding, because there, blockchain is something which is global. It's not something which pertains to a member state. So yes, I agree, but to a certain extent with certain caveats.
Okay.
If I may add something, I think it's a question of information and self-determination.
Yes.
And blockchain, like any other technology, can have a good use or a bad use. We experienced this with the internet, and even in the early days of the internet, we had schemes like PGP, where they were trying to basically give some sort of form or structure or body to this concept of information and self-determination. And I'm 100% sure that the blockchain can be a good tool to use that, to empower us to actually be in control of our data. But there will be those situations for sure where the technology will be used wrongly. Social media, I think, is the perfect example. One could say it was empowering for me to be able, to be in control of my data, but then with all the Cambridge Analytica standards, scandals and PRISM, etc., we realized that there was a very bad cloud somewhere. And this can also happen, unfortunately, with the blockchain. So yes, it's a fantastic technology, it's a great tool, but it's a double-edged sword.
All right. Something to add, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, look, if I think about a right to be forgotten, I almost kind of laugh at it, because you only have a right to be forgotten if the person that you are claiming that right against recognizes that fact and recognizes the authority of the EU in enforcing that right, and that the EU have sufficient tools at their disposal to do so. If we are to generalize a right to be forgotten, which is about re-architecting essentially human rights that currently now steer towards information as being a source of power, we have to provide the technological means to do that, and you cannot currently do that in a generalized way at present. You have to start off the basis of having a self-sovereign identity. When the user is in control in the internet, then he, the user, she, the user, can depermission and have that right to be forgotten in a technological way. It is it is trivial to talk about a right to be forgotten if it is not generalized through technology. And that's to me, the spirit of GDPR that we have to understand. And it starts with a recognition of self-sovereignty. It starts with that recognition. And I would rather have a debate about self-sovereignty in the internet than a debate about GDPR and how it applies to blockchain. If we really care about the question of, data privacy on the blockchain, the fact is, the real ideal blockchain is a Monero-style blockchain or a Zcash-style blockchain with smart contracts embedded. That's the future of blockchain, a public blockchain that you could never see into a black hole, but for which you can tether a real-world identity to that blockchain, to that anonymous black hole that it's tethered to a real-world identity. But only the people that need to know that tethering should have that information, and that permission comes from the user as a starting base. So blockchain has the perfect architecture for reinventing the internet and embodying the real spirit of GDPR. So I think the point is, what kind of world do we really want to create? We have today a system that is broken. We need to re-architect it. And if everyone is here, sitting here today, talking about blockchain, it's because you also believe in that future too. Thank you.
I think it was the great end of our discussion. Obviously, we will be here around for next couple of days. So if you have any questions, or you would like to discuss anything regarding the data privacy, we are here. And thank you very much for your attention.
The catalytic effects of blockchain on the financial services industry. Kenneth Farrugia, Finance Malta.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm truly delighted to have this opportunity to address you at this conference, which I think is the largest conference I ever remember, having participated in a number of them in Malta. As you can see from the program, my role this morning is to share my views and thoughts with you on the catalytic effects of blockchain on the financial services industry. And within the time that I have at my disposal, I thought the best way to address this topic in the next 10 minutes is to take a look at the following three core points. So in the first part, I thought it would be useful to set a bit of context to this, look at the importance of regulatory innovation as a catalyst for growth. And I thought it would be very appropriate to have a look at what we have managed to develop here in Malta insofar as the legal and regulatory framework is concerned, and what are the benefits of using regulation to induce innovation leading to growth. In the second part, I will talk about some use cases we're seeing in the financial services industry. Now, really and truly, mainstream operators, particularly banks, are a sort of a Jekyll and Hyde situation. So on the one hand, we're seeing banks scuttling to really utilize this blockchain technology in the various facets of their operations. But then the Hyde side, literally, means that when it comes to cryptocurrencies, most of the banks are sitting on the fence. And I just want to touch a bit on that as well, because it is ironic and diametrically opposite to where we see this industry pushing itself. And last but not least, in closing my address this morning, I thought I'd touch on some challenges insofar as this sector is concerned, and the importance of managing these challenges in a dynamic manner. So if we look at the framework we've built in Malta, it's amazing. I remember 2 years ago, speaking casually on blockchain. It was very much in its embryonic stage with some consultants in the space. And in 24 months, we have managed from base zero to put a regulatory framework, a legal framework in place. And this is, I think, evidence of the attractiveness that little Malta has created insofar as this sector is concerned. And I'm a firm believer that innovation knows no size and it knows no jurisdiction. And clearly Malta is a true case in point. And when looking back at these last 2 years, I drew up 4 key points which I feel were the critical success factors to bring us where we are today. First of all, strategic foresight. This sector was, to a degree, a nomad, had no home, very similar to what we experienced some 12, 13 years ago in the gaming sector, where we've developed a sound regulatory and legal framework around it, and we moved very rapidly, very quickly, to put together a legal and regulatory framework to support this. The second part is the trilogue. The importance of having a trilogue or consisting of the political leaders, because political leaders are enablers of innovation, the regulators, and the industry. Sometimes we look at regulators, we look at policymakers, pushing them for innovation. But really and truly, innovation starts from the very bottom. It is the industry itself that puts innovative ideas on the table, and regulators and policymakers are simply enablers of that. But we had this very well-functioning trilogue of leaders, political leaders, of regulators, and the industry, which has enabled us to move very agile, in a very agile manner. But it was structured agility, phased agility with milestones in that, which has enabled us to come to a launch pad where we are today. And last but not least, it's communication. A number of initiatives were organized internally, beneath the hood, explanations of how blockchain works, the application of this technology across financial sectors. We organized quite a number of block finance events over the past 15 months, which clearly gave a better understanding to stakeholders and operators in this regard. Now let's go to the use case side. And I think if you look at why are banks now really scuttling to move into the space, clearly there are a number of reasons. Blockchain in itself, I think, is associated with two key D words. It's disintermediation and disruption. Now, clearly disruption, and this is quite ironic to a degree, because disruption on its own can cause chaos. Whilst in the banking sector, albeit we had chaotic incidents and the financial crisis, there is a degree of order. So I think the way to enable the growth of the sector is to have an orderly disruption, is to find a balance between the disruption that this technology is causing, but ensuring that there is a framework of order around that, and that framework can only be achieved through regulation. And I think, the operators in the market today are very much realizing that blockchain can be used in a very effective and efficient way, not only impacting their business and operational models, but today blockchain can be applied as well to organizational restructuring. Sometimes you have layers of decision-making processes within organizations, and now we're seeing, interestingly enough, AI being used in an organizational structure and disrupting and disintermediating such organizational structures. And financial institutions are realizing that. Financial institutions are realizing that, particularly the banks, and I'm a banker by profession, so there is a conflict of interest there, but banks are realizing today that, fintechs are in their space. Fintechs are in the traditional domains of banking. In Malta, we had Revolut and other operators in the mortgage space, in the robo-advisory space. But banks still own the trust of their clients. And this is, I think, the opportunity set we're seeing crystallizing in the markets, where banks are really teaming up with fintechs, taking their applications, their IP, implanting that on their platforms, and making that technology and those solutions available to their clients. A number of reasons for doing that: customer experience, operational efficiency, significant cost savings. Just this morning, I was in a meeting discussing with consultants on the time, pain, and effort it takes to onboard a client, to open a bank account, to review the transactions of that client, and to monitor the activity of the due diligence activity of the file of that client. Now, plug in technology to that. For those of you that have been onboarded on one of these fintech platforms, Revolut, I have no links with Revolut, by the way. It's very easy. It takes a few minutes, and within 48 hours, you receive the card, right? And this is the UX that banks are really pushing themselves, to deliver to their customers. There are a number of areas where we've seen the banks playing a significant role insofar as taking technology and implementing that technology within their platforms. KYC and due diligence is the obvious one. Payments. Payments are a bit of a big pain for banks. Imagine I want to send a payment from Malta to the UK. I go to my bank here. The bank has its own correspondent bank. Then it touches base with the correspondent bank of the beneficiary's bank in the UK, and then finally it lands at your account. But sometimes it takes days, and sometimes payments get lost in the process. So apply cryptocurrencies to this. Peer-to-peer transfer. I transfer my fiat to crypto, crypto to crypto in your wallet, and within minutes you have the money in your account. Imagine the disruption and the efficiency and the cost saving that this induces. Again, tokenizing securities and applying these. I've seen some fantastic blockchain-based mortgage apps, mortgage and personal lending apps, which I think will change the face of the traditional way currently we avail our services from financial services providers. But if I had to take a particular use case, which will not only impact banks, but impacts global trade, is trade finance. Now, for those of you, trade finance is a simple concept. Intrinsically, you have an importer and an exporter, but you have a lot of middlemen in the middle. And I just really made a list of these. So you have the importer, the exporter, the importer bank, the exporter bank. You have the correspondent banks in the middle. You have the shipper. You have the terminal inspectorate. You have the freight forwarder, the document courier, the import terminal, and the export terminal. So you can imagine how heavy paper-based this sector is, right? Now, if you look at some of the platforms that we've seen introduced, the WeTrade, yes? And Batavia, where the banks have really teamed up and created this fantastic blockchain-based digital platform where it takes just 1 hour to execute a trade order. Just 1 hour between the importer and exporter. It's all digitalized with smart contracts within that. There are challenges, for sure. The interoperability of blockchains is a challenge which has to be reckoned with because there will be separate blockchains for different operators in different markets. But I think that these are challenges that can be, in my view, overcome, and we're seeing them coming to fruition. And this, in my view, will accelerate the way that we do business. So this is the vision: to have all the stakeholders in trade finance integrated together on one single platform, a paperless environment which will facilitate trade to be done between importers and exporters, between one country and another. In concluding, because my time is running out, I want to touch base a bit on the challenges. As I said, there is still a divide between the disruption and disintermediation that blockchain and cryptos are inducing and mainstream regulations. I think this divide needs to be addressed. I think serious operators in the space want to be regulated. We've seen that in the gaming sector. When we launched a robust legal and regulatory framework, we had literally, tens of companies flocking to Malta, setting up their operations here because they wanted to be properly regulated. Regulation gives proportionate regulation. Let me correct myself. Gives comfort to shareholders, comfort to the company, comfort to the directors, and comfort to clients. Clearly, on the banking side, banks, as I said, are a Jekyll and Hyde. And my takeout on this is, in my view, banks are justified in taking this position for 3 reasons. 1, cyber attacks. We've seen a number of exchanges that have been hacked and millions have disappeared off their platforms, which somewhat has tainted a bit this sector. But really and truly, in the mainstream world, we've seen bank accounts that have been fraudulently accessed to, yes, by illegitimate activities. So it happens even in the mainstream world, but it resounds much more strongly in this blockchain, in this crypto environment. Secondly, it's the anonymity of crypto owners. Right now, this is a very sensitive issue because in the banking world, in the financial services world, you need look through to the ultimate beneficial owner. So this clearly has to be addressed before banks really start playing the game. Last but not least, it's reputation. Banks today are struggling with significant AML-driven fines because the concerns here are anti-money laundering, right, in the crypto space, as is in the fiat space. And reputation sometimes, many times costs money, But we've seen big banks, Deutsche Bank, Nordea, BNP, being fined hundreds of millions of euros for AML concerns. So clearly they're not in the right frame of mind to start considering the servicing of crypto trading or crypto-based transactions. There is a governance gap as well. I firmly believe that we need to address this governance gap. I've met with a number of operators in this space that need to really beef up their internal governance, because this can operate only in a proper governance framework. There are still technology issues to be addressed, particularly the interoperability of different blockchains, and that is a challenge which needs to be reckoned with, but it's a technology challenge, and technology challenges will in some form or shape be overcome. Last but not least, one important point. I want to end with this: reputation. Now, some may deem that reputation and the protection of the reputation of a country or an industry is the role of the policymakers and of the regulators. Actually, the responsibility is equally shared, if not significantly should be shared, by the operators, the stakeholders in the ecosystem. We all have a collective responsibility to ensure that we safeguard the reputation of this growing sector. This is not a simple paradigm shift. We are lucky to be experiencing this infrastructural shift. I consider myself to be lucky, albeit in my retirement phase now. I consider myself to be lucky to be in this infrastructural shift, because these do not happen very often. The shift from fax to email, the introduction of internet, these are infrastructural shifts. So we're very lucky to be in the development stage of this technology and the surrounding applications around it. But we need to ensure that we have strong internal governance within our organizations, within our service propositions, because only in that way we can protect and safeguard and sustain the growth of this industry. I stop here. My time is up. I wish you an enjoyable conference, and for our foreign delegates, have an enjoyable stay in Malta. Thank you very much.
New authority on the block. What are the objectives of the newly established Malta Digital Innovation Authority? Stephen McCarthy, MDIA. Ian Gauci, GTG Advocates.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to Malta. Today I'm going to discuss a little bit on the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, what we have been doing up till now, what is the role of the authority in the case of technology arrangements, and how the Malta Digital Innovation Authority will interact with competent authorities. First of all, I would like to highlight, because everybody speaks about the laws, the legislation that Malta has, and basically one might think that it is something complex and it is something difficult. But in actual fact, it comprises basically of three basic simple acts. First of all, the principles which the law uses and is based on is user protection, market stability, and market integrity. So those are the principles that the law was based, and also they are the principles on which the Malta Digital Innovation Authority prepared its guidelines. As you know, the guidelines have been issued for public consultation about 2-3 weeks ago, and yesterday we issued the final version of the guidelines. The laws basically, as I said, comprises of three, which is the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, which is the authority which I represent, the Technology Arrangements and Services, and the Virtual Financial Assets Act. The Malta Digital Innovation Authority basically gets the laws and works on the guidelines in order to be used by the systems auditor and the technical administrator. As you are aware, the systems auditor has a very, very pivotal role in the work which the authority does. In fact, in the guidelines which we issued, we know that there are some onerous requirements, which we will come to them later on. Then there is the innovative technology arrangements and services, which caters basically for the technology and tackles also the services being provided, namely that of the systems auditor and that of the technical administrator. Now, the distinction between the two will come to them later on. So basically, the ITS Act is there as a regulatory regime for the MDIA. So the first act, which I mentioned, is there so that the authority, which I represent, uses it as a basis on which to work on. Certification of innovative technology arrangements, fit and proper assessments, tells you that has to be fit and proper assessments, registration of systems auditors, registration of technical administrators, and the guidelines, which I said we just issued. Now we come to the most important, in my opinion, most important part, which are the systems auditors' requirements. And basically, the requirements are, in general, are the following, whereby you have to have a qualification in ICT with an MQ level of 6 and higher, hold a certification in IT audit or IT risk or security management, has experience in carrying out audits and reporting based on audit established standards, ISAE 3000. This is something which is normal, especially in the audit with the auditors. Now, another point, and this we gave a lot of thought about it, is that he has to have suitable experience in ITAs in the fields that would be subject to audit of not less than 2 years during the last 3 years. And that is an important feature, a feature which we went out of the traditional way of audit, whereby it's not only good if somebody comes and says, listen, I've got experience in IT. I have 20 years in web design. No. Since this is a new technology, we are after experience which is focused and based on that field of ITA which is going to be audited. So if the systems auditor is going to do an audit on Ethereum, for example, then we expect that the systems auditor has the experience on that specific field. Then another important element which in our guidelines which have been issued yesterday, we have pointed out that we decided to distinguish between 2 types of audits. We said, listen, it is not fair that an ITA is compared to all other ITAs. Why? Because there are different complexities and, within inverted commas, there are different risks. Example, if I have an exchange which, for example, has a cap of 50 euros for the transactions, then it has a certain amount of risk and complexity. But if there's an exchange with deals in millions, and there are no caps, etc., every day, then that has a different complexity and has a different risks. So what we're saying, and we did not issue the criteria yet for this distinction, but we will issue them in the coming days, that where the ITA has certain complexities and certain risks, then we require an enhanced audit. Now, what do we mean by an enhanced audit? First of all, the guidelines already tell you in detail what type of audit. what requirements for the systems auditor we have. Besides those requirements, when we go to an enhanced audit, we're going to ask further requirements from a systems auditor. And this basically would be based, although I cannot give the exact details at the moment, we will be publishing in the coming days, but they will be based on, for example, the number of the client base that the systems auditor company has, the turnover, the venture capital. So as you can see, we're looking at something which is pretty more robust when it comes to a higher risk audit. Finally, as the law states, that there must be an element of substance in connection to Malta. So what we're saying is that we do not believe that the systems auditor or company comes and relocates to Malta, no, but we would like to see some kind of substance and branch, etc. And this applies especially when it comes to an enhanced audit, because whilst we are looking for a robust and experienced with history company, then an agency in Malta would be enough. Systems auditor would basically provide an audit opinion, and I repeat, we refer to an audit opinion. Why am I saying this? Because a systems auditor will not have a checklist, but will carry the responsibility. There's a possibility to nominate subject matter experts, and registration is valid for 2 years, and we expect that there would be continuous professional now I pass on to Ian so that Ian can also explain the interface between MDIA and the MFSA.
Okay, so I'm not going to speak about GDPR. I have to be fast. How do I plug in this? I've been one of the experts. I've been the legal expert on the blockchain task force before, so I have been heavily immersed in this. I'm one of the lucky advisors of Steve and his team. So what are we doing here? We're creating something innovative. This is an authority which will deal with innovation. We are crafting, we're making sure that the code, because we're speaking about code, is safe. Okay? In today's world, you have cars, you have code running on wheels, code running on wings, aeroplanes. Everything is dictated by code. It's technology. Technology is becoming so pervasive. We had discussions before where we want the technology to replace GDPR. We are looking beyond. You build the principle. So we want to make code safe. That is why we're creating this structure. Now, we're bridging as well between the technology having a specific authority, have a specific unit to make sure that criteria are created which courts can use, on which liability can be attributed, as well to the financial services, so ICOs, STOs. Why? Because contrary to a normal IPO, they have the technology. They are promised you something which is reflected in a terms and condition, is as well then reflected, transmuted in a technology arrangement, smart contract. So there, we make sure that the functionality of the smart contract meets the requirements as well of the white paper. We make sure that that particular technology, the technology arrangement, is safe. This is something which is innovative, and it's coming from a small country like Malta. And in the future, by making sure that code is safe, that's why you're hearing a lot of chattering on robotics, AI. We are tackling code. That is where innovation lies. And we, Malta, proudly say that we are one of the first in doing it. Thank you.
Will blockchain ever replace the sovereignty of government? Blockchain is envisaged to give rise to a number of possibilities in changing the modes of governance. What does this mean for the current form of governance, and what are the potential changes for future forms of government? Mirko De Malde, Linkius. Matthias Klies, Europe Coin. James Muscat Azzopardi, Muscat Azzopardi and Associates. Vit Jedlička, Lieberland. Tawny Lane Kasserly, Cultu.re. Moderated by Nate Whitehill, CryptoSlate.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having us. My name is Nate Whitehill. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CryptoSlate. CryptoSlate is a hub for cryptocurrency researchers and blockchain enthusiasts. We're based in Seattle, Washington. So today we have a great panel for you. Let's start with a brief round of introductions.
Yeah, my name is... Is it working?
Yeah. You know what?
My name is Matthias Klees, and I am the CEO of EuropeCoin Finance Cloud API. We are building an interface where everybody can connect to and launch his service in a home device with an app store to install apps and services for their financial needs.
I'm Mirko De Magde. I'm Chief Operation Officer at Green Chaos, a consultancy company, and I'm also president at the Italian chapter of the Government Blockchain Association.
I'm Dr. James Scozzopardi, based in Malta. We're an advisory firm, Credence, and we do the regulatory, legal, financial, and the whole range of advisory services.
Hello, I am Tony Lane Casserly. My company is called Culture, and I work on global citizenship and the thesis, really, that in the next century or so, there will be a large portion of our humanity that will no longer organize in the way that the traditional nation state is structured. Much like blockchain revolutionizes finance, we're looking at the transition into new forms of governance.
My name is Vítě Lička. I'm a founder and president of Liberland, which is a newly created country 3.5 years ago. Right now we've got 600,000 people that are on board, and we really want to build the freest jurisdiction and the most friendly to crypto jurisdiction on earth that also will make the criminals liable. So we are trying to fix this new era of crypto anarchy which is coming with this era of old nation states which are harming the economic growth, and we are trying to find the best way how to put these things together.
Thank you so much, guys. Okay, so this first question is going to be for the group, and feel free, anyone to jump in at any point. The question is, which of these events are most likely to happen? A, blockchain will transform government. B, blockchain will be ignored by governments. Or C, blockchain will replace governments.
Yeah, may I jump in? I think it's not about replacing. Blockchain will be very helpful for governments, will transform them. In my opinion, the most helpful tool to help with better localization of governance. So if you see Europe, for example, it's a very centralized system, and the need of the people for more localization manifests in many unpleasant political movements. And in fact, localization is not about borders. Localization is about the oldest form of decentralization we had.
Once Ronald Reagan famously said, if it moves, you tax it. If it continues moving, you regulate it. And if it continues moving again after regulation, then you subsidize it. The idea is that the government would for sure not ignore blockchain innovation. And I agree with you that it would be helpful for creating a new set of citizen-centric services and to improve transparency, which most of the time is not really there in government services.
I think that blockchain will not replace government, but blockchain will be an extremely important technology that will be used in various sectors. And I think we'll see some very interesting prospects happening very soon, ranging from, I was recently discussing with two interesting projects. One of them is, we live today in a post-truth era. So we live today in an era where I can go on any stage, or I can be a leader of one of the largest countries in the world, go up and state things which are absolutely not true and affect this world. So there is a possibility for a truth-based blockchain system that could automatically check the truth of what someone is saying. Another possibility, this is far-fetched and it won't happen, but it's worth thinking about, is a blockchain system where let's say, replacing an election system where people vote in real time on a constant daily basis through using your digital identity. And I can only be in government, and I can only pass laws, and I can only have legitimacy if in real time I do control the majority. Is this interesting technologically? Yes. Will it really ever happen? No, because it's not workable. But I think there are a number of ideas that we'll see, and they will radically change the space.
I disagree a bit with the truth question, because maybe a blockchain can validate the truth of what somebody's saying. Yeah. But didn't we know that it wasn't untrue when somebody lied? Nobody cared. Yeah.
But this is a way of knowing. If you're speaking about facts, you're speaking about facts. So if I'm Donald Trump and I say, look, I'm going to pass tax cuts before the next election. There's no Congress before the next election. I mean, that is clearly untrue. So being red buzzer, and hopefully people who don't have the knowledge to look at that and say, no, I'm saying not all Mexicans are rapists, will be able to accept that. Now, you'll have a number of people who will always be extreme right or extreme left. That's where we're going. We're going towards...
The truth point is more about caring than about knowing the truth. The truth, they know the truth.
That's a good point.
Yeah, actually,
that's a very good point.
Well, and in another level, I think rather than saying that truth is something that is far more subjective. If you look at the modern state of media, every story is an opinion. There might be facts within a story, but all stories are opinions. Now, if we had, let's say, uTorrent for whistleblowers, where people could upload pieces of information that they found anonymously, and that information could be used to inform journalism, then we're merging closer to something that looks like a verified fact-based society, where actual news stories or pieces of information can be verified not as right or wrong, right? It's the same thing as human nature. Are people good or bad? People are people. Stories are pieces of information. I think what we should focus on is really reaching a broader human consensus in our understanding of what is real. So maybe two people from two different backgrounds can say, you know, we can completely disagree on how we solve this problem, but we can reach an understanding about what is real in this information. We can reach a consensus, and through that, actually incentivizing bridge building. Now, to your question of what will blockchain do for government? Will blockchain replace government, right? I say change happens in two ways. It takes place with time or with chaos. And I'd far rather have change taking place with time than a complete systemic upheaval. Now, what we're working on with global citizenship is really addressing populations that have no nation of reference. There could be whole countries that end up underwater, entire economies that end up demonetized because digital currencies have replaced the billions of dollars of inflation that they've artificially created. And really, with blockchain technology, I say this to the Fortune 100 companies that I teach, as well as institutions, it's really may the best economy win. So I believe that if blockchain technology creates greater economic opportunity for citizens than they're provided with in a traditional standpoint from whether it's a company in a private sector or a nation, the competitive landscape is shifting. Now, global citizenship is the ability for someone who may have no host nation of reference to gain access to the opportunity to be verified within the borders of a country, merely by having their community, their network of peers, verify that they are who they say they are, that they can be trusted, and that they have these skills. And there's an entire population of people that would be affected by the refugee crisis, migrants, climate change, that this conversation isn't addressing. So I'd like to bring those people to light and say that our landscape is shifting, and blockchain is a huge enabler to help people and enable that change.
Very good.
I think that the C is right. Ultimately, the blockchain systems will replace governments. And it can actually happen quite fast. I think it will start with a currency reform, like kind of a global currency reform. We can see how the whole country starts to embrace crypto in just a couple of months. Venezuela started to accept all cryptocurrencies while their own currency becomes worthless. And that's a great thing, right? We're getting honesty to the places where governments normally were the most dishonest in ways of they were printing tons of money. And we see that problem, of course, with ECB. We see that problem with the American Central Bank. So that's a great start. What we believe that the transition will also go into, of course, it's going into financial sector, banking, etc. But it will go into governance. What Liberland is trying to do is to build a first decentralized jurisdiction based on Kleros platform right now in cooperation with DAOstack, 2 key partners. And we want to build an ecosystem where all the players will be able to hold accountable for what they are doing, and the justice will be 10 times faster, 10 times easier, it will be accountable. So, the idea behind Liberland is to really combine the most freedom with the latest blockchain technologies in a reasonable way.
I agree in certain points, yeah, because apart from the question of honesty, this is a different topic. I can say, as though I'm quite unhappy with the regulation points, what in terms of the own adoption of blockchain ideas inside of the government, there's pretty much happening inside Europe.
Do you see, Matthias, that the biggest barrier to adoption is clear and consistent regulation?
In terms of financial market, yes. And the problem there is that the government has shifted too much of the responsibilities to the blockchain industry. So there, the government asks us, is it a security, is it not a security, to take an easy topic, yes? And each company has to pay to verify it, and in fact, the government doesn't even be clear what itself thinks what the security is and whatnot, yeah?
Absolutely. Mirko, what are the advantages of storing our biomedical data on the blockchain, and what are the risks?
Well, I think that it's, first of all, you don't really want to store your actual biomedical data on the blockchain for obvious reason. But starting from biomedical data, but in general with data that it's in regard of my person, I want to get control. I want to get more direct access to the data that it's about my person. And this can be enabled in a more efficient way by blockchain. What is interesting is that now citizen and patient are completely disenfranchised from their data. They don't control at all what happens with their data, while the data actually move along between government, private institution. And this is actually a problem, because we are moving in a world where data will be really a fundamental thing, and privacy will be a fundamental right. And ownership on the data as well, that will be a fundamental right that we have to be able to enforce. Now, people don't have any means to enforce fundamental rights as privacy and data ownership. What I think that blockchain will be a big enabler, a big technological enabler for these new categories of rights that will be coming up in the next future, and that will be changing our democracy.
Absolutely. Tony, could you talk about your work with culture and how you see culture as potentially supplementing governments to be able to use governance for blockchain?
Well, culture is a really simple idea based on a very obvious insight to me. I have thousands of friends around the world that are buying up thousands of acres of land. The real estate market is shifting, and the way that people will live in the future is also changing. People are buying up abandoned castles. Actually, the Italian government last year was giving them away for free. Did you guys know that? If you sent in one piece of paper, the Italian government would give you an entire castle for free on the condition that you brought in tourism. So you could host one event like this a year and get a free castle. and that our relationship to property and human organization is shifting, and that we'll need to look for more local methods of governance to really create structures around these communities. Because after all, what is a blockchain? What is Ethereum? What is Bitcoin? What is EOS? They're all communities, and the decentralized applications are sub-communities that are grouped around not only people but economies. So I'm really looking at this from building a human infrastructure, not merely an economic infrastructure. The for-benefit way that we look at that is Web of Trust, which is an open source standard to help people take ownership of their identity, their land titles, their marriage contracts outside of the bounds of a traditional jurisdiction. So I don't know if you guys know this either. If you live in Israel, unless you ascribe to the fundamental religious law there, it's actually illegal for you to get married in the country. You can fly, this is why destination weddings are an industry. You can fly to Cyprus and be married, or somewhere else, and then return to Israel and have your marriage be validated. But now with blockchain technology, that might be as simple as using a VPN and having a registered agent from another jurisdiction verify your marriage contract. That's what our open source standard Web of Trust aims to do, to create a global jurisdiction. Our for-profit company, Culture, is really looking at helping people connect with communities, and those people in communities connect with resources. Because the truth is, resources around the world are already abundant. They are just not evenly distributed yet.
And just to be clear, Culture will act as a platform for decentralized applications to run, correct?
Yes. Okay. So it's both for decentralized applications to give people marketplace access to communities and decentralized applications that are used in, around, and with communities. So one simple use case is if I'm coming to Malta, I might not want to stay in a hotel. I might want to stay with friends. You can search for people that are a part of your communities and then stay somewhere potentially for free. Resources are easily shared when people can trust each other. So that's really what we're working on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Super interesting. James, could you talk about, do you ever see smart contracts as potentially replacing any of the aspects of law or what lawyers do?
No, replacing, I don't think so. I think smart contracts are proving to be and will prove to be a very, very useful tool for us and in general. We need to be there advising on smart contracts because, as we know, the big challenge will be translating what we're drafting into a smart contract. So we will have to be a bit more savvy with coding, and we'll have to rely on the technical persons who are translating that into code. We will also see a number of legal issues that we're not even in a position to predict as yet. So we're very, very, very early with smart contracts. But we're going to see some very, very interesting challenges. It's something that we're looking forward to.
Very interesting, thank you. So during the 1990s tech revolution, the United States really became the go-to location for internet startups. Why is the United States seeming less likely to lead the next blockchain revolution?
It's three letters, SIC, right? It's crazy, right? Like the enormous debates now, what is security and what is utility token is, of course, damaging the whole industry. And I think it's one of the, in the history, it will be viewed as one of the most ridiculous debates that we ever had, that the regulatory body, United States, is trying hard to, to slow down the whole process. And of course, it's like the Americans shooting themselves into the leg. It's just like, China banning crypto. They're just slowing themselves down. That's the great thing about these technologies, right? You cannot fight it. It's coming. And you can only slow yourself down in its adoption. So what we are doing, for example, now in Liberland, that we are the first jurisdiction to be able to incorporate fully tokenized companies. We're having this pilot already, and everybody will be able to trade shares as long as they pass some sort of KYC. So I think there is a great space now for all these innovators, also in terms of jurisdiction. And I think it's great, because now we are in the age where basically you can have your own country. And you can prove yourself to the world that you're able to provide better jurisdiction. All the things now with the DAOs are embedded. into the smart contracts, and you no longer need a country to incorporate yourself. But if you provide a nice framework for others to incorporate themselves, you are actually creating a new country.
But there's another, sorry.
The US has to learn, if you don't write it, it writes you.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's a contrary view to that, and maybe it's an unpopular one, but we should be embracing regulation. So why is regulation there? People speak about the SEC and speak about the SEC as being some sort of a demon. But ultimately, the SEC is taking a pretty sensible position saying, listen, you're going out there, you're selling something that looks like security, you're not calling it security, but I need to protect, ultimately, investors. So we can't go out and say, listen, this is a really cool technology, yay, blockchain, it's a very, it should be free for all, but no, it shouldn't, because there you still have scams, you still have fraudsters, you still have people who are selling things that they should not be selling to unsuspecting people. Look at Malta. Why are all these people here? Look around you. This is huge. Delta Summit was big, this is huge. Why do I have 11, 12,000 people coming here in a month? Because of regulation. Without regulation, we would be absolutely nowhere. This happened to us in gaming. We became the #1 gaming jurisdiction globally for online gaming. The success is it's huge. Why? 2004, regulation. Before regulation, everyone was saying, okay, gaming, look, this is, why should we regulate? But that doesn't really work. It sounds great, but maybe speaking from a cynical 42-year-old lawyer point of view, it doesn't work.
This is something that I wanted to contribute in this. Exactly, this is the point. What is the role of the government in this stage? Is that it would be nice to, okay, yes, blockchain, self-sustainable democracy, self-sovereign, without need of government. This is not the case. You still need government, because otherwise it's much more easier to find yourself into a sort of crypto-anarchism, which is guided by other interests that are not transparent. Government is there to provide regulation, to provide guidance, and it's very important that you continue doing this.
I have to agree. I have not known much about Malta before I went here, and I was amazed that even on the way from the airport to here, I was able to talk to the taxi driver about cryptocurrency like I would be already on the conference. Yeah, this is amazing, really.
Really good. That's really great.
USA should look more to Malta.
Yeah. You're all welcome.
Well, we're out of time, guys. Thank you so much. That was super interesting. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.